right, and welcome to yet another episode of the Women's Cricket Podcast. It's episode number 36. And of course, this is the place where we talk about all things women's cricket. It is World Cup time, and here we are talking about each of the 8 teams that are going to participate in the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup. We are excited for the conversation that we're going to have. Neha, finally, the big event is right here at our doorstep. Are we excited or what?
I think excitement would be an understatement, Akshay, because this is the marquee event that all of us absolutely look forward to. And I think the way, both of us sort of manifested this episode to eventually turn out, it did happen, right? We got the best of the best guests to, share insights about their respective teams. And we couldn't have asked for anything better. The World Cup starts in a few days, but then, again, the countdown in my head has been happening for like a really, really long period of time, just counting sleep, until the World Cup sort of gets underway. And for all of our viewers too, right, who would get some amazing content from our side. So just very pumped and excited.
Exactly. I mean, the kind of panel we have lined up, I'm really, really looking forward to this. And let's hope we have some insightful conversations with each of them. All right, first up, it's time for us to discuss the defending champions, Australia. And they aren't just the defending champions, they're also 7-time winners of the Women's ODI World Cup. And yeah, man, it's going to be some team to discuss because most of these points have been spoken about. But even then, every time you talk about them, you just can't stop raving about the fact that how strong the side is. And we've got none other than Julia Price joining us. We, for one, can't be excited enough for having her on board. And Julia, we'll just bring you right on stage. At the time of the recording, unfortunately, just about 30 minutes ago, we got the update that Grace Harris won't be a part of the World Cup. So let's just start with that while we are at it. Grace Harris missing out, Heather Graham being signed as her replacement. Not exactly signed, drafted in as her replacement. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's a real shame for Grace Harris. She's done a lot of work in improving her game over the years, been sort of penciled in as mainly a T20 player, and that she's really worked hard on being able to bat for long innings, and she's just such an impact player as well. It's really hard to replace someone like Grace Harris, just the way that she can take a game away from someone so quickly. So Heather Graham, great replacement, but certainly not a like for like there. And I think Heather will be the first to admit that as well. But, just nice and full and straight, little variations with her bowling and can come home in that middle order as well. But Grace Harris being out is a big loss for Australia.
But just to quickly chime in here with a question, Julia, when we just look at the makeup of this squad, 10 of the 15 members kind of featured, right, in the last edition as well, which, just goes on to show how much experience the side sort of has. So again, your thoughts on just how Australia is able to always maintain that nucleus and have them deliver results?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously they're the current champions. They won it back in 2020, I think it was now. Yeah, a long time ago. But they've just really owned this format of the 50-over format, and they've found other teams have found it pretty tough to be able to beat them. So they'll be coming into this tournament pretty confident as well. They've also been 2 World Cups in India before 97 and 2013, and they've won both of those. So I don't think India scares them at all with the fact that they know how to play in India. They love having the big crowds. Obviously, they had that massive one at the MCG for the final of 86,000 back in 2020. So I think they'll be really looking forward to this tournament. They've got a lot of experience in the group. They've also got a couple of new, unfortunately Grace not there, X factors coming into it with someone like a Georgia Vole coming into the system. Phoebe Litchfield hasn't been to a 50-over World Cup. So to me, there's that really nice mesh of experience and also some really young and good energy coming through as well.
And Julia, just to add to that, stability is sort of, a term that you would associate with Australia with the kind of names that they use. It's usually a lot of consistency. You see a long rope given to each of these players. In fact, even when we look at some of the names considered, for instance, when we look at this, Australia have used just the 17 players in the last ODI cycle, the least of any teams, and less than half of what India, which used the most number of players in the last cycle. So that goes on to show 17 players used in the last cycle, 15 of them are a part of the ODI World Cup. Meg Lanning, of course, retired herself. So which means you pretty much known who your squad is going to be at the end of the last World Cup itself. What do you think that bodes for the players themselves when they have that security that, I am being trusted. They've placed the faith in me that, I'm someone to sort of take the side forward. Do you think that actually helps with players while performing on the field too?
Yeah, absolutely. Shelley Nitschke, who's coaching them at the moment, she went through all that sort of system herself where when you get entrusted with understanding that you've got a certain role and this is what we're looking at you at, and the communication and the trust in that group is very, very strong, and that's why they've been able to stick really with the same people, because they know that they can do the job. At the same time, it's not a bad thing to be able to blood a few new players in there as well, and I think that happened last year or last season with Georgia Vol coming in and just hitting the ground running. Our domestic system is really allowing players to that transition straight into the national team is a lot smoother than it used to be, because of this really good communication between selectors, coaching staff, and what's happening in the domestic program as well.
Speaking of which, Neha, you can just walk us through the fact file in terms of how Australia have performed in the last ODI cycle.
I mean, yeah, just looking at Australia's fact file too, right? I mean, the last time they played was, versus India at Delhi, 20th September. It was quite interesting, run feast sort of an ODI match. And there were a bit of concerns from, coming into the series. The last they played was, way back in March, but the unit, didn't clearly show that sign of rustiness. And again, just looking at the performance in the ODI cycle at large, they played 32 matches, won 27 of those. And those 4 losses came against, I think 2 of them were against England way back in 2023, 1 against South Africa and 1 against India, of course. But again, 2022 to 2025, they've been just that sort of a dominant side. Even their recent form sort of indicates that. And again, just the highest run scorer for them in this cycle is none other than Beth Mooney, right? With 1,098 runs. She's been in that prolific vein of form. And even when just going through the run scorers for them in this cycle, you have such prominent names there who have been constantly delivering. And even the highest wicket taker, of course, has to be Ash Gardner there with 52 wickets, has done her job every single time, stepping in those middle overs and in the fag end to get you those wickets. So yeah, I mean, this is probably the most perfect, pristine fact file that any other team would not be able to boast of. But this is Australia being Australia, right?
And Julia, once again, when we talk about the conditions that be on offer in India, we all know the stat that Australia hadn't even lost an ODI over here since 2007, barring, of course, the second ODI of the recently concluded bilateral series. They won the 2013 edition, they won the 97 edition as well in the last 25-30 years. Clearly, this is a country and these are surfaces and conditions that they enjoy playing on.
Yeah, well, from the scores that were just in the bilateral series, there's some pretty flat decks out there. So I'm not sure that's what they're usually used to in India. They're normally used to something that might have a little less bounce, a little bit more turn. Didn't offer a lot for the bowlers. I'm not sure if that was intentional from India's side, just to negate the bowling attack of Australia, because I mean they've got 4 of the top 10 bowlers are from Australia in the rankings at the moment. So fortunately for Australia, they've also got a very good batting attack. So to me, I think they're pretty comfortable with the conditions over there. They've got a diverse group of girls that can, obviously a few good spinners in there as well. Ashgar, we mentioned her before. Megan Shute recently just got 5 wickets and was the highest wicket taker in the series just happened. So it's not necessarily just about the spinners on Indian pitches. It's got to be about the pace bowlers as well. And Beth Mooney, I mean, she just scores runs for fun, doesn't she? She just goes on and on and on. Second highest run scorer in that series behind Smriti Mandana, who is crazy good. So, Australia really enjoy the conditions in India. They adapt well. The Sri Lanka, obviously, they've got a couple of games in Colombia as well. But I think it'll be interesting how the pitches play in quite a variety of venues around India. But they generally have played at a lot of those venues.
But even at large, Julia, when you look at the series that just concluded versus India, like what were your impressions of Australia, right? They hadn't played an ODI since January, and you could see some sense of, rustiness in certain areas. I mean, although they eventually did end up winning the series, did you find some problem areas that could potentially arise maybe during the World Cup too?
Problem areas. It's probably hard to judge from that series, because they're obviously using that series as a bit of a, let's test and see how a few people are going to go in different positions and opportunities, given a few little niggles as well. People sat out for some little niggles that they might have had, which probably changed the dynamic of what they will go with in their first few games. But no, not really. I think they're still playing the game hard. They're still trying to win in a certain way. As I mentioned, the pitches weren't really conducive to too many wickets for the bowlers, but I thought that a few of the bowlers were able to demonstrate, their ability to, bowl in good areas, have plenty of variations, and just try and restrict the hitting if possible. Obviously, Mundanao was about the only one that they found really difficult to restrict, and it'll be exciting if that form continues for the World Cup for India, for her. But no, generally, I think they've got a very deep batting lineup. I think they've got plenty of opportunities with the ball. If anything, the two leg spinners, Wareham and King, maybe weren't as effective as they would have liked. But I think they'll certainly still be working hard on how to negate the fact that they couldn't really get much turn out of these wickets, and just make sure that they keep nice and strong with their lines and lengths.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's a bit of an understatement, to be honest, to say that Australia have a deep batting lineup, because you've got Ilana King and all batting in number 10. And I'm like, wait, when does the lineup end? When do we stop having to worry about the next batter coming in? And talking about the conditions, Julia, you spoke about how while Australia are, sort of understanding and they know these conditions fairly well, especially with the Women's Premier League and so many of their players being a part of it. But gone are the days when, Indian surfaces used to dish out spin-friendly pitches or something like that. Like you said, Georgia Wareham or Ilana King, they could not really get a lot of pitches from the surfaces. But the flatter the surfaces, the more your batters then come into play in terms of ensuring that they keep scoring above par scores. What do you think will sort of the thinking be for the bowlers and for the bowling unit, with the surfaces not really giving them a lot of help? Do you think then it sort of becomes imperative for them to be more defensive than, say, attacking like before?
With the ball, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got someone like Megan Shute. If there's nothing much in the surface, it's more sort of what you're doing in the air then, isn't it? So you've got Megan Shute, who's, a number 2 ODI bowler, or number 3, I think now, actually, swinging it in, getting good swing through the air, creating something that's going to attack the stumps and make it a little more difficult for the batters. You've got someone like Kim Garth. She's just improved all the time, and she now can also bowl in lots of different times during the game as well, which I think makes her very, very useful. Really nice slower ball, sets up batters beautifully, taking the ball away, getting that off cutter, coming back in. Also the back of the hand slow ball. Annabelle Sutherland has been working on this sort of stuff for a long time as well. Just the fact, she's outstanding at it. Really nice at the death as well. And with that comes a little bit of risk. She does have a loose ball every now and then. But what we did see in that series in India is Darcy Brown stepping up, which was so nice to see. Great to have her back as well. Picked up 3 wickets in one of the games. And she's also starting to move around where she is as well. So, again, it's about that movement in the air. It's not just about necessarily if the pitch is going to give you some assistance. If it can't, what else can the bowlers do? And I think they've and the spinners obviously will use that with their flight variations and pace through the air as well. So, to me, I really like the way that the pace bowlers for Australia are developing in being able to adapt to, if it's a bit of a flat pitch, what are we going to do?
And just to that, Julia, so is there any merit in probably then considering changing the makeup of the 11 itself? Like you mentioned that the surfaces are going to be a lot more flatter. Or do you think they should probably consider bringing in a batting option or a different kind of a bowler? Because when it comes to pacers, in all fairness, Australia's top 7 has Annabelle Sutherland, Elise Perry and Talia Meghna. That's 3 more than decent pace options already. So then potentially bringing in someone like a Sophie Molyneux instead of one of the other pacers, just to add a bit more variety to that spin attack. Do you think that's something they should consider?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sophie Molyneux, it's going to be exciting to having her back as well. Obviously, she hasn't played a game for a fair while now, and her sort of recovery period will be perfect for the start of the World Cup, conveniently. But yeah, she's a match winner in herself. She played beautifully in the T20 and been captaining the Renegades in the WBBL last year. I think she can. I think anyone really in that team could come in and replace anyone at any time. Rarely do you see Kim Garth and Darcy Brown together, but there's no reason why both of them couldn't come into a game together and be bowling at each end. But there are lots of partnerships that work really well together, and I think they'll be just playing around with it. They'll be wanting to get Sophie Molyneux into a game as soon as possible, I would think. I don't know if it'll be the New Zealand game first up, but it'll be pretty close to just so they've got some protection at the back end. Whether Elise Perry bowls as well, I know she bowled a little bit in the series. She seems to be injury-free at the moment, but I'd say her batting is an absolute priority for Australia at the moment. She's such a good bat. Number 3 has really nailed that position nicely, and then you've got plenty of other batters around her to continue. But yeah, I mean, we've got so many all-rounders in the team. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the way Australia is shaping up, right? The squad just has so many, match winners at any given point in time that, you would see them more often than not delivering. But I just want to take a moment to talk about Aliza Healy, right? The captain who will be leading her leading the team in the first ODI World Cup. So how excited are you to see, what she sort of brings to this group and just the experience, right? Priceless.
Yeah, well, she's coming back from a bit of a rough trot as well. Had a foot injury and her knee's been playing up. She's getting older. She'll love to know that I'm saying that. But she's one of those players that really lifts. Obviously, in the series, she didn't probably bat as well as she would have liked. Last game was pretty good. Got back on her attacking ways. Still ranked number 6 in the world with her batting. Most runs in 2020, I think, and player of the final in the ODI. I mean, she's just an incredible player, and she'll be one of those ones that just leads from the front. Mightn't be the highest run scorer of the tournament, but she's going to score runs when she needs to score runs as well, and be very aggressive in the field with regards to her field placements and supporting of her bowler. It's always good to have a wicketkeeper behind the scenes who can back up your bowling attack all the time. So yeah, exciting for her to be back. I don't think she'll be too worried about not scoring a lot of runs in the series leading into this, but I think they're all just pretty comfortable in India at the moment and just acclimatising well.
100%. And, we've spoken about almost all of the names, but even then, it's good that we will just run you down through the squad. Julia, it would be great if you could just walk us through the names and what do you make of the squad in general?
Like I said before, I think it's a great squad. You've got a couple of young players. Litchfield and Vole haven't been to a World Cup, a 50-over World Cup before, and they're both very exciting and good mates, ironically enough, as well. So it's good to have two batters. Litchfield particularly, I think, has been working a fair bit on her technique. It was probably a little vulnerable occasionally, as a left-hander can be, squaring up a little, dropping a hip out, and she's worked a lot on her technique, as we saw in that first game. Unfortunately got a little quad strain in that first one-day against India, but player of the match for her. She's been outstanding. All of those players have got good experience, though, have played for Australia for quite a long period of time, other than Vole. Sophie Molyneux, exactly what I mentioned before. Great to have her back also from injury. They might be a little worried with a few of like Darcy Brown had some back spasms. She didn't play. Annabelle Sutherland had some hip soreness. I'm sure they've got that under control. So with experience comes a few little niggles every now and then, and with an aging team. But at the same time, I'm backing the support staff from the Australian squad to be able to get all of these girls absolutely bang on for the tournament and ensuring that they can be at their absolute best. It doesn't really matter how old they are. They just keep performing, the Australian girls, and they'll be wanting to go back-to-back. No one's gone back-to-back since 1988, where Australia did, I think it was 78, 82 and 88, I think. They did the back-to-back. Other than that, no one's done a back-to-back for quite a while. So that's probably one of their little goals that they'll be wanting to tick off, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That makes complete sense. What the Aussies would be looking at. But Julia, you spoke about Phoebe Litchfield there, and agree with you. I mean, of course, she's first of all one of those, with the way she sort of deploys her reverse sweeps and conventional sweeps, she's sort of become a blockbuster when it comes to women's cricket. A slight digression, but what I want to understand is, we know the kind of conditions we usually get in Australia, and they're not exactly suited to spin or something like that. But even then, most Aussie batters are extremely adept at spin. In fact, some of the best players of spin are Australians. What do you think contributes to that?
That's a good question. I suppose for a long period of time, spin was, all the top bowlers in the world were all spinners, and that pace off was probably a little frustrating and preventing a lot of those big scores that we're seeing now. So to me, I think Australians have worked very hard on footwork, ensuring that they can find the boundary off spinners all the time, whether that be square or particularly down the ground. I mean, we saw Smriti Mandana, the number of sixes she hit down ground from spinners and just using her feet was outstanding. And I think probably Australia have taken a leaf out of her book in the way that they've been executing their shots against spinners. So to me, they're always trying to find where's the boundary, and if not where the boundary is, how am I rotating the strike? And they've sort of really made spinners, other than maybe Sophie Eccleston, who's got a bit of extra height and a little bit of extra turn and bounce. A few of them are quaking in their shoes a little because they do get absolutely taken to the slaughter by the Australians who love facing spin.
I mean, we keep talking about their batting. It's not like the bowling's far behind. When we look at how they've performed in the last ODIs, I can look at that. Like, Australia is in a world of its own. There's no one even remotely close to them. It's that lower left quadrant that you would want to be ideally, which means you're not conceding too many runs, you're taking wickets frequently enough. And on both counts, Australia have been numero uno in the last ODI cycle. Once again, just going on to show what we can expect from them. But another point that really sort of boggles my mind is this. The gulf between Australia and the next best side. Just look at this. Of course, for the uninitiated, what this shows is their batting run rate versus their bowling run rate. Ideally, for teams that are doing well, you would be scoring fast and you would be conceding runs a lot more slowly. And look at the gap for Australia between their batting and bowling. There's no one even remotely close to that. Of course, there would be people on the negative side of it or teams on the negative side of it. But Australia, once again, in a league of its own. And that gets me to my next question, Julia. We know that Australia have been the strongest side for the longest time as well, in all fairness, once again. But would it be fair to say that now the gulf between Australia and the next best side is far reduced compared to, say, 2022 or 2013 or any other time? Do you think that that gap is definitely reduced and you see now more teams actually chipping in and giving Australia a run for their money?
It's pretty hard to tell, actually, because there haven't been, as you mentioned, that many series. Maybe it is getting closer. Obviously, 2-1 in this series, really, really good. Sri Lanka and South Africa just had a 2-1 series as well. I think there's probably a few. There's probably a few teams that are starting to, particularly actually, Sri Lanka have really moved up the ranks. They're ranked 6th at the moment, and I think particularly the subcontinent countries, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, West Indies missing out. I think that was a real shock for a few people, but really I think the Asian countries are really stepping it up, and it's great to see that they're loving the 50-over format. It's probably one of my favourite formats, actually, because, T20, not that anyone can win, but the less the number of the overs, the more mistakes you can sort of have happen, or a few things that a bit of luck can go your way. But 50-over cricket is really, you've got to make sure that you're on your game and you know exactly what you're doing. And I think that a lot of countries have worked very, very hard at that 50-over format, particularly in the in Asia. And I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Pakistan as well can bring to this World Cup. But it's difficult to say if they are catching up, and we can reconvene after the World Cup maybe and discuss this. If Australia don't win, well, yes, they are getting a lot closer. If Australia win again, then it's back to the drawing board a little bit and just trying to work out how some countries can get there. England, obviously, number 2 in the world at the moment, India 3. England at 2 is an interesting number. I mean, great that Charlotte Edwards, legend of the game, has taken over as their head coach, and I think that's going to make a big difference. But is it too soon for them to be able to step up and be able to perform at this high level and get the performances out of them, which, a year ago in the women's Ashes in Australia, they just weren't up to scratch. And then you've got India at 3, and they've never won a title. Lost a couple of finals, but haven't actually won a title yet. So is this the one for them to step up? They looked pretty good, I have to admit, in the series, but is there still that gulf between Australia? It's a good question. And I'll tell you in, November 2nd or whenever the final is.
And Julia, you've yourself been a 2-time World Cup winner, so it's probably fair on my part to ask you this question about, how most teams would be looking forward to, actually defeating Australia, doing the unthinkable and all of that. Now, having been a part of the Australian dressing room too, I mean, I'm sure you all would be well aware of, that fact that all the teams are out there to, sort of get you. Like, how much of that aspect also, sort of plays in the mind? Because when you look at the T20 World Cup of 2024, Australia had that very heartbreaking loss to South Africa. And that loss was just spoken about so much and all of that. I mean, come this World Cup too, a lot of players have already said, the team to beat is Australia. So somewhere psychologically, does that also sort of play up a little bit?
I think it is. I think they like the pressure. I mean, 2017 is probably more the one that's hurting them at the moment. They just didn't have a great tournament. And from that was I think they really had to go back and look at their processes and how they were going about things and who they were picking and what's the future look like and what areas are we missing. Was it just our mentality? There are so many things that they looked at when it doesn't go as well as you would have liked. T20 World Cups, as I just mentioned, obviously they'd love to win everything if they could, but, sometimes you just don't have it on that day. You mightn't play a bad game, but someone else might play a slightly better one. So I don't think they'd be, obviously they were disappointed not making the final, but no, I think they'll continue being confident. They love the pressure. They love giving back to the fans and support back home. So I think they'll just have a great time while over there, enjoying the experience, as well as constantly though reviewing and ensuring that they're on track with their individual goals as well as their team ones.
And last bit, of course, Julia. Firstly, what I want to know is 3 players that you're looking forward to in the ODI World Cup.
Ooh. Okay, one's going to be Sophie Devine because it's her last World Cup. So I'll be really keen to see how she goes. She did so well at obviously T20 World Champions as well. I know 50 overs is a different game, but I think, and they've also got 4 new players in their squad as well. So I think it'll be interesting how New Zealand go, but I'd really love Sophie to go well, both with bat and ball. Oh, Jemmy, we didn't see Jemmy Rodriguez for India. I love Jemmy. I think she's just got such great energy. She's so good for the game, has lots of fun. And what I really like about Jemmy, and maybe from being in the WBBL system back home, I think she's really embraced the, being herself sort of thing. And, she can have some fun, but then she knows when to switch on and be that, stabilizing bat. And her game has just gone through the roof in the last few years since her, when she didn't get picked. So I really enjoy watching her play. And obviously she's had a bit of I think she had a viral fever or something in the series and didn't feature, but I'm sure she'll be great. And the last one, we are talking internationally, aren't we? England.
International Australia, your pick.
Yeah, no, we won't have talked enough about Australia. One more who I'd really love to see do well is probably Heather Knight. Obviously not the captain anymore, and I feel it was probably a little harsh on Heather. I think she's an excellent captain. She's been such a fighter for the group for a long time and really leading that team very, very well. Obviously, her and Nat Sibba-Brunt are good mates, so there's no disputes there. But I'd love to see Heather just sort of step up, play a big role for the team, and help England not get too far, but far enough that she has an individual great performances at the World Cup.
All right. Lastly, this prediction time. We've got 4 predictions for you: highest run scorer, highest wicket taker, the top 4, and the eventual winners. I think the eventual winner, we have a fair shout of who you might be going for, but yeah, the other 3 as well, and this. Yeah.
Okay, a top run scorer. Obviously, Schmitty in the form that she's in at the moment would be hard to go past. So I'm just going to have to go with Schmitty Mandana. Obviously, anyone who's opening the batting too has got more chance of being able to do that. Bowlers. Oh, my word. Who am I going to pick for a bowler? Look, I'd love to. I know, it's her. I'm just going to go with it. I was going to say Kim Garth. She doesn't usually pick up a lot of wickets. But when she's bowling in a partnership, the wickets do happen at the other end. So we say, the most wickets for the tournament, is it about the most wickets or is it about the best or most impactful bowler? I really like to talk about impact as opposed to maybe numbers. So I'm going to go with Kim. I think she's just improved enormously. I think she's ready to go. Her variations are great. We've discussed how great she is. Top 4. I will say Australia will play India in the final. And I think England probably 3rd. And then it's a toss-up between South Africa and I'm going to say Sri Lanka, just to throw I think they've improved. I know, I'm just throwing it out there. Dark horse, I'm hoping Adipadu has a good tournament. But I just think they're constantly improving all the time. They've played heaps of games. Their confidence is, pretty reasonable. They've had some good tournaments. I'd love to see Sri Lanka in that top 4. It'd be so good for the country. And they're also hosting as well, which would be really nice.
Yeah, that's a fascinating choice. Of course, make no mistake, Sri Lanka themselves defeated India in the Asia Cup final last year. So they're not there just to make up numbers. They'll definitely be putting a fight over there. And it'll be very interesting to see if Sri Lanka somehow sneak it through to the top 4. That'll definitely be a performance for the ages from them. So fingers crossed we get to see the small island nation over there in the top four. But anyways, that's that from the preview of Australia. Thank you so much, Julia, for being a part of it. We had a great time talking to you. I hope you also enjoyed yourself over here. And any chance you're in India for the World Cup?
I am actually. I'm heading over I'll be doing Australia-New Zealand first game. So looking forward to doing that.
Oh, lovely, lovely. That's great. All right. See you in India and hope you enjoy your time over here. And for your sake and for the Australian team fans' sake, let's hope Australia wins. But let's not make any mistake about where our loyalties lie. The jokes apart, of course, it's going to be a great World Cup, and fingers crossed, we get to see fantastic performances over there too. All right, and the second team that we'll be talking about is Pakistan, a side that recently played against South Africa, came up with a few spirited performances over there as well. They will unfortunately be playing all of their games in Sri Lanka, so in some sense, it also helps them with the schedule. But of course, we'll be talking about that and much more with none other than Marina Iqbal. Hey, Marina, how's everything back home?
All good. How are you guys? Hope you're doing well.
We're doing just fine talking about women's cricket, something Neha and I have been talking about a fair bit in the last week or so. Not complaining about it, of course. Cutting to the chase straight away, let's talk about the fact fight in terms of how Pakistan has performed in the last ODI cycle. Of course, their last game was versus South Africa in the recently concluded bilateral series. They did end up winning that game. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with the series. They did lose that 2-1 to them. They played 32 games in the last ODI cycle, winning 13 of them, which is actually a better win percentage than even the likes of New Zealand and Sri Lanka, so putting them in good stead over there. When it comes to their highest run scorer, it's none other than Sidra Amin with 1485 runs at a staggering average of 57 and a strike rate of nearly 74. And when it comes to wicket takers, the highest pick right now is Nashra Sandhu with 41 wickets. And of course, they are being led by Fatima Sana, a name that we'd love to talk a lot more throughout this discussion. Coming back, of course, Marina, when you look at Pakistan and the way they've performed in the last 3 years across the ODI cycle, definitely a lot of positives over there.
Oh, yes, definitely. Especially when we talk about batting, I think that we have struggled for many years in terms of batting, especially when the longer format, the ODI format comes up. So I'm really happy that they have managed to plug in that fault, and especially talking about how Sidra Amin and Muniba, these two are the ones which Pakistan relies on, and they have somehow found the perfect form just before World Cup. So I think that it's perfect for them. Even in the middle orders, I think Fatma Sana is very crucial. Alia yet to hit, but Natalia Parvez coming up with that 73, I think that was very crucial because they needed some support down the order. So I think right now, as far as batting, I'm pretty happy with that. But they do need to pull up their socks in bowling now. So that is a little concerning part.
And Marina, also to just get your thoughts on Fatima Sana, the skipper, right? I mean, at the age of 23, leading a team like Pakistan with such interesting talent, there's a lot of experience coming in too. So again, your thoughts on Fatima Sana, the captain, and just your impressions of how she's been in her captaincy tenure so far?
Talking about Fatma Sana, she's a superb human being and a tremendous cricketer. I mean, the moment we met her, it was when we all seniors were playing in Karachi. She came to the nets and she started bowling. And I think she was provided with that brilliant environment of seniors, especially in terms of, if I speak about Sana Mir, she had been, she's been mentoring her for a long time now, and she had the perfect environment to learn at very early age to understand the demands of international cricket, to understand how she can improve herself as a cricketer. Not only that, from that moment, we knew she had some spark in her, and she had that leadership quality. So over the time, you can see the moment she was given an opportunity in New Zealand to captain the side. They won that match, and I think that was just the start for her. The best thing about her is she manages to keep her performance and team's performance as a captain apart. So whatever's happening with the team, she knows that she has her role to play as a player, as a cricketer, as a batter, as a fielder, as a bowler as well. So that's very tricky. That's where most the captains, they do get overshadowed. And I think that she has a very, very brilliant and calm head on her shoulders.
And Marina, you spoke about Sana Mir there. The last ODI cycle has also seen Pakistan move past two legends in Bisma Maroof and now Nida Dar as well. So considering how, some of those big names are missing, do you think that is potentially a cause for concern, the lack of that experience that those two brought with them?
Well, I think that's a sweet and sour part of this journey. I mean, yes, the experience they all had, I think they have given enough to the youngsters, to Pakistan cricket in terms of playing cricket. Now, obviously, they had to move on with their lives, the younger ones need to step in. And I think that was a very, very smooth transaction. And I think whoever right now, it's a great amalgamation of seniors and juniors as well. In particular, seniors who are now well settled and they do understand their roles. They are performing well. So I think that obviously that transaction may hurt for a while, but you do understand that you need to move on with the team.
Yeah, and talking about the batting now, Marina, we've always seen with Pakistan, the one issue has been their sort of inability to keep attacking, especially when you've seen the way Australia, England, and even India have performed in the recent past. You've seen cricket evolve to a point where boundary scoring and consistently, getting those runs has become that much more important. When we look at certain numbers as well, let's just have this graphic out. There you go. When it comes to batting in the last cycle, unfortunately, boundary hitting has not been Pakistan's forte. They do fall on the wrong end of the spectrum when you compare it to, say, England, Australia, India, and even South Africa to some extent. How do you see that panning out for them, especially in this World Cup? The surfaces are expected to be batter friendly. Do you think that is something they will have to focus on?
Yeah, definitely. They will have to focus that. But again, when you look at the combination now, they've got Iman Fatma in, Natalia is scoring runs. They've got obviously Fatma Sana down the order who can hit big. So these three are the important ones with the boundary scoring role. But for me, with Sidra Amin and Muniba Ali is more attacking. But the best thing about that opening pair is that they both can run really well between the wickets. They are now well settled in with their role. They do understand their own strengths and weaknesses. So right now it looks like a really good combination in terms of how the opening stands go and how the middle order can come up with some explosiveness.
And just to quickly add in here, Marina, about Pakistan's form itself, right? The World Cup qualifier was quite commendable for them. Winning all of their 5 matches looked like a side which had a lot of their areas in check. But the series versus South Africa is where you saw a few chinks in the armor, but still some very spirited performances, right? So again, your thoughts on how the past year or so has been for Pakistan and just the context of these two series.
I think it's really important, especially from a batting perspective, because as I mentioned, they had been struggling for a while. So understand that, okay, we now have a perfect template in terms of how players are coming in, performing at their certain numbers. And now they have probably a few, Natalia, again, I would like to mention because it was due time for her to perform and she can be explosive. She's a good runner. She's a good fielder. So that actually adds that gap. If she comes in and performs well, if she can get quick runs, Iman Fatma, I think they could have given her a little bit more chance in South Africa series because going right into the World Cup and playing a big game at the biggest stage can be a little overwhelming. So I thought that they could have used her, utilized her, and given her some sort of, the environment in which international cricket is played. But nonetheless, I think obviously bowling, that has been our biggest strength. But now with batting complementing that, yes, I do feel that they need to be little smart, especially tactically in terms of bowling, because they do have conditions in their favor. They're playing at one venue. They can obviously do their homework. But again, with the given conditions, they can't just wait for the opposition to make mistakes. They need to take wickets.
And sticking to the batting itself, Marina, because Iman Fatima is the name that you also mentioned a couple of times over here, youngster who is sort of looked at as, in the same mold as someone like an Aisha Naseem, very aggressive, can sort of take the attack to the opposition. You rightly mentioned that she probably hasn't had the kind of game time that you would have liked, ahead of an ICC event like the World Cup. Do you see her starting at the event?
It all depends on the confidence, and I've known her because when I was a selector, she was in the circle. She played under 19. I saw her perform. I saw her how she improved her game fitness. Yes, she is a little bit. Obviously, she's younger at the stage, but again, it's all about for someone like Iman Fatma, someone like Fatma Sana, Natalia Parvez. It's all about confidence. They do trust their technique, but if they have a bigger heart, they're confident about their shots, they will go after the ballers.
Maina, again, when it comes to aggressive batters, if we have to broadly classify, the Pakistani top six, you've got, like you mentioned, Iman Fatima, Fatima Sana, Natalia Parvez. Then on the other end of the spectrum, when you look at your bankers / anchors in Muniba Ali, in Sidra Amin, to some extent, Omema Sohail, how do you then see this panning out in this World Cup? Because when I look at someone like a Sidra Amin, numbers show how effective her technique has been. She's got the highest balls per dismissal across any batter in the last ODI cycle, minimum 500 plus runs. So clearly, she has the game to last long enough to play out the entire 50 overs. Something we saw even in the South Africa series. It wasn't just about scoring a 50 ball 100, it was more about batting 30, 40, 50 overs, staying through till the end. Clearly, that's the role given to her. And do you think Sidra Amin and Munibali, especially between the two, the role also slightly changes, or are you still expecting them to sort of continue playing that anchor role and stay till the end?
I think I had a word in qualifiers with the coach Mohammad Wasim, and we had a really healthy discussion about how the batting is going for them and what roles and what vision they have, especially for the coming tournaments. And and I do agree with that. In previous, because we all talked about how Pakistan has struggled with the strike rate. The problem was that we were considering strike rate for each and every batter, especially in ODI format, regardless of the skill, regardless of the potential, regardless of how you can manage different players in different roles. And because of that, Sidra Amin came under the radar that she anchors the innings. She is scoring runs, but not with a healthy run rate. I think that discussion has been put to rest because we all now understand, even Sidra and the management, that that's her role. Okay, everyone else around her has to play her game. She has to play her own game. And right now, that clarity has actually helped Pakistan in terms of batting. Muniba, she is always aggressive. She will score runs. She can take the innings longer. She has that potential. With Sidra, it's more clear that okay, she's going to play as long, as deep as she can, and no one is going to talk about. Obviously, she does recover her strike rate, but no one is going to push her out of her zone because that is not her role.
Yeah, and coming now to the bowling, Marina, because you've sort of made it clear that that's probably between the two departments that is their weaker suit, and especially with the way they operated in the qualifier, you saw that they were going for that three spinner strategy along with Fatima and one pacer. Usually it was Diana Beg over there. Is that something you think they will continue with even in Sri Lanka during the World Cup? Go for three spinners and then Fatima Sana and additional pace over there?
Yeah, given the conditions in Sri Lanka, I don't mind that. I mean, I think the spinners are doing really well. Yes, you need to give a little bit of space with Diana. She's a brilliant fielder. She's a really good team player. On a given day, she can bowl really well. But right now, she's out of her rhythm. But with conditions they're playing in Sri Lanka, obviously you're going to rely more on the spinners. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the spin combination is there. They're performing. Nashra was brilliant in the last match against South Africa. That will be a huge boost for her because, I mean, going into the World Cup, she'll be very vital. Sadia, obviously, Ramin, Umaima can be a surprise package for anyone. So I'm really happy with the spinners going in and with Fatma and Diana coming. And Wahida also, she can be really consistent.
And again, sticking to the spinners itself, of course, Sadia Iqbal, I've made no bones about the fact that she's arguably my favorite spinner right now going around in women's cricket. Her with the new ball, especially the way she brings it into the right-hander, it's a thing of beauty. And again, even in terms of numbers, Sadia Iqbal has been fantastic in the way she's bowled. She has the best economy of any bowlers in the last ODI cycle, minimum 20 wickets taken. Just going on to show how effective she has been, especially when you spoke about how your bowlers will have to sort of ensure that they don't concede too many runs so that their batting unit can then sort of take the game from there. That's where someone like a Sadia Iqbal becomes that much more crucial along with Nashra. Any chance we can see Pakistan potentially even use someone like a Saida Aroop Shah ahead of Diana Big, going with that four spinner strategy if the conditions do favor that? Do you think something like that's also possible?
Yeah, with the Aroop, I think it's all about confidence. They should have given her more match practice, but four spinners, I think, wouldn't be a good choice. They have to obviously rest one, and I think with Sadia, you cannot take that. You cannot take that option out because with the new ball, she's been brilliant. Nashra has been performing. Umaima is another. I think Diana, yes, with new ball, she might not be that trustworthy right now because of the rhythm. But later in the innings, she can be, or even in the middle of the innings, she can be really handy, and she's a really brilliant fielder. So I think with four spinners, I think they're already in the lineup. They won't be, if they want to include a Aroop, they have to obviously sit one of the spinners, main spinners down. So I can see that happening against. I wouldn't consider even Sri Lanka a weaker team now. So they'll have to be very, tactical about if they want to play a Aroop.
And Marina, just considering the venues too, right, in India and Sri Lanka, like how do you think the pitch conditions will sort of affect Pakistan's strategy? Like if you were to pick a playing 11, what would that shape up like?
Well, probably I might go with the playing 11 that they had for the first two ODI teams. Obviously, that's their strength. That's the best playing 11. I think they're probably Arup would be sitting out. Obviously, I don't think. I think that Natalia would be an important part. Alia wasn't there, but I think they have to now adjust Natalia in. So with the given conditions, they have to play all three spinners. There's no doubt about it. They need Umaima as well in the middle order, but Natalia and Umaima can be. I think that can be a bit challenging. You can't play both of them. You might need Natalia more so. But again, it all comes down how they are feeling when they go to Colombo, because as we all talked about, that it's going to be a hard work for batters. You don't get boundaries that easily. You need to run really hard. You need to be on spot with the fitness. You need to be smart about how you build your innings. In that context, I think Umaima is more experienced. Yes, with the middle order, if you want to play Natalia, then Umaima sits out. Again, that brings out the question of her being a part-time off spinner. So, because your top order is performing, you've Fatma Sana. So probably that would be my combination.
Interesting, and I'm also curious about someone like a Shawal Zulfikar. So fair to say that she also wouldn't sort of be a part of the 11 right now, or do you see her also potentially, instead of Umaima Sohail at the top somewhere there?
I might sound a little harsh, but looking at her journey, she was out of the circle for a year. She recovered, but again, she didn't play enough competitive cricket before walking back into the squad. And that's probably the reason that she's struggling. She's a top-notch batter. She has the potential, but again, coming from the injury, you've not batted for probably 6 or 7 months. Coming straight into the competitive cricket, that can only destroy you mentally if you have a failure. And I think that has been the certain case. I am not sure if I would have been there, I might have not put Shawal back into the squad for the World Cup. Maybe you could have given her a little bit more domestic competition, maybe in the series. You could have given her a full chance, all three matches, to play and try to gain some confidence. If she clicked, yes, I would have picked her for the World Cup, but not for the World Cup straight after coming back from the injury, because batters, it's a tricky thing to come back into the form, to understand the game again, because in a year a lot does change. So, and you as a player as well, because your body struggles, you can see that she's struggling with fitness as well, and mentally she's struggling in her batting.
And Marina, one more aspect that I sort of wanted your thoughts on, considering you've been a former player yourself, now you're into the coaching and the scouting side of things. Like, how important is the fielding standards, right? I mean, historically, we have seen Pakistan and a lot of other women teams sort of struggle with that. But if you had to just, chart how Pakistan has progressed, especially in the fielding side of things, like your thoughts on the same?
Oh, they've got huge room to improve. I mean, fielding is a whole different department. You cannot take it for granted. If you're doing well in batting or bowling, feeling is that you have to be there 100%. There is no excuse for that. I mean, if you're performing in bowling, batting, I understand that, but fielding can turn the game around within few balls or few deliveries. I think that Pakistan has huge area to improve in terms of their catching. You've seen that in against internationally, the standard was pretty mediocre. To be very honest, if you want to beat bigger teams, if you want to win games, you need to be on top of your game.
But your players to watch out for Pakistan in this World Cup?
Yeah, my player, obviously, first of all, Sidra and Umaima, Muniba. I think I'm relying on them. And obviously, I think Natalia might have a breakthrough of her career. She's high on confidence. She can be really vital for Pakistan in the middle overs. And again, for bowling perspective, is always a tie between Nashra and Sadia. So, but overall, I think it's a biggest opportunity for Fatma Sanna to again re-announce herself as a leader and opportunities. So my money is on her as well.
We've got four predictions for you. One is the highest run scorer and the highest wicket taker, of course, both for Pakistan. And then who do you think would make it to the top four of the World Cup? And who do you think would be the eventual winner of the Women's ODI World Cup 2025?
Oh gosh, guys, that's not fair. All
It's all
right,
right.
top scorer, I think. With the form, Sidra Amina, she's apart from other players. So I think she will carry that form. And obviously, it's a bigger stage. She has more hunger to perform at the biggest level. So for me, top scorer would be Sidra Amin. I think Nashra Sandhu in terms of wickets. She has that ability to turn the ball. She can be really handy. Sadia, yes, with the newer ball, obviously you would expect her to be more consistent and contain runs rather than taking wickets. But Nashra has an important role to play in the middle overs. Well, obviously India, they're the favourites for the obviously home side. Australia, Pakistan. I think it's going to be tough between England and New Zealand. I'm going for New Zealand.
Interesting. That's a very interesting top four. It'll be fantastic for the tournament if that ends up being the top four in all fairness. And who do you think will be the eventual winner, Marina?
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, I think two best sides, India and Australia, they'll have to fight for it. But again, given the conditions, I think India, they are more confident. Again, looking at how their recent years has been, there are some pretty really good cricketers coming in. I've seen them in Asia Cup. I've seen them in under-19s. I've seen them play recent matches. So again, it's all about the balance, the confidence of the players. So with the conditions, with the home side, with the home crowd, I'm going to pick India.
And I think on that note, it is time for us to wrap up this preview. Thank you so much for being a part of it, Marina. We've somehow managed to brave ourselves through the internet and the Wi-Fi connection. Apologies for all the trouble. All right, and thirdly, we've got England, a side that we definitely have lots to talk about because a side that's really polarized opinions, across the world, especially with how they've performed in the last year or so. So there's plenty to look forward to. There's been a transition. There's been a change at helm, both in terms of captaincy and coaching. So we'll have to see how that NSB Charlotte duo sort of perform in the upcoming World Cup. To discuss that, we've got a Charlotte, of course, but it's not Charlotte Edwards. We've got Charlotte Ashton joining us. I wanted to say live from England, but no longer are we live. Just joining us from England for the time being. And there we go. Hey, Charlotte, how are you?
Hey, how are you both?
Yep, doing all right. It's been going great, like we were discussing off air. Plenty to talk about when it comes to women's cricket. There's the World Cup coming up. The warm-up game's starting pretty soon, to be honest. But before we get into all of that, Neha, could you just walk us through the fact file? How has England been across the last ODI cycle?
Absolutely, Akshay. Really happy to have Charlotte join us as well. But just to give all of our viewers a quick run through of England's fact file. Of course, their last match was versus India, where the series was indeed forgettable, but still I think gave a lot of learnings. And they've also been playing a lot of practice games versus New Zealand. That again, through the course of our discussion, we will talk about both of those matches that they ended up winning. Again, to put in perspective their performance in the ODI cycle itself, they've played 40 matches, they've won 25 and lost those 13 matches. There's been a bit of transition, right, from Heather Knight all the way to Nat Silverbrand, which is again an interesting change that we will sort of reflect upon. And just the recent form, the series versus India was a mixed bag for them. A lot of learnings in that sense. And the highest run getter in this ODI cycle, it has to be Nat Silverbrand, right? No two ways of looking about that. I mean, the kind of quality player that she's having chipped in with those 1,500 odd runs at a stellar average. I mean, stepping up from an all-rounder to captain now has been a massive step up for her. And the highest wicket taker in this ODI cycle, surprise there, has to be Charlie Dean. I know a lot of people were thinking it could be, Sophie Eccleston, but Charlie Dean, being so prolific and getting those 55 wickets too. So I'll probably start off by just asking Charlotte her thoughts on how England has performed since that last World Cup. A very heartbreaking loss in the final, but then 3 years of good quality cricket, a lot of ups and downs, captaincy changes and everything. Yet a lot to be proud of, right?
Yeah, lots happened, hasn't it? It feels like it was even such a long time ago that it was the Women's Ashes back in January. There's been a lot of bumps along the way, I think. We've been equally happy with the performance against the West Indies, but I feel like England have fallen short against potentially those even stronger sides. So hopefully they can come back a little bit stronger this World Cup. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for sure. And let's probably start off with Nat Silverbrand there, because we cannot sort of understate, her importance to the side. We just saw those numbers. In fact, she's the only batter in the last ODI cycle to have racked up more than 500 runs, both at a strike rate in excess of 100 and an average in excess of 50. Just marrying consistency with aggression. I mean, she's definitely going to be extremely key to the side.
Oh, absolutely. She's so consistent, like you say. She adds so much experience to the team. So the squad, obviously, there's a few older names in it, but most notably, there's no Kate Cross in the squad. So having that senior knowledge really, really helps, I think. She stepped into the role of captain really well, I think. She was always a bit of a leader anyway. And she just seems to be performing with bat and with ball, to be fair.
Yeah, I feel that's a great sort of segue into just talking about the squad in general. Charlotte, could you just walk us through the squad, and we'll definitely get to Kate Cross as well, because that was a very surprising omission. But yeah, all yours.
Yeah, so it's fairly standard, really. We expected to see the likes of Tammy Beaumont in a 50-over competition, opening the batting, potentially with Amy Jones, like they have been doing, because they put on that crazy back-to-back double hundreds between the two of them. So there's Tammy Beaumont, and then we've got Sophia Dunkley, who offers a little bit of explosive batting, sort of maybe coming in at 3 or 4 potentially. She's really exciting. I saw her at Lords in the rain-reduced game against India. That was a great game, even though the rain did alter things a little bit. And then we're coming into Amy Jones as the wicket-keeping option. Like I say, Amy Jones has struggled with the bat in previous years, but this year she's really come into her own, I found. What will be really interesting as well is Heather Knight here. So obviously she's stepped down as captain now, and I'm wondering if that will give her a little bit of freedom with the bat, but also she's recovering from injury. So again, that will also be interesting to see. But I think having her alongside Nat Sither-Brunt, they're both really helpful in terms of giving that experience and that knowledge and keeping calm under pressure. We've also got Danny Wyatt-Hodge to sort of strengthen the batting even more. She's offering a lot at the moment. She's been great in the 100. She always is in shorter format cricket, but we all know that she can change her innings to a slightly longer format, which is the ODI. And then obviously we've talked about Nat Sither-Brunt. We can talk about her forever, really. She's so experienced, so calm under pressure. She's scoring all these runs. She's taking wickets. She's taking stunning catches in the field as well. There's nothing really she can't do at the moment. And then that moves us on to Alice Capsey, who's recently been missing from some of the England squads. She's offering, again, quite a lot of power in that middle order batting-wise, as well as a bit of part-time spin, which will be beneficial to the conditions over in the World Cup. And then we talked about Charlie Dean being the fastest English woman to get 50 wickets. Her spin is going to be essential. We've seen a bit of her captaincy in the 100 for London Spirit, so we know that she's maturing as a cricket player while she's still young. And then sticking with the spinners, we've got Sarah Glenn, leg spinner, who again has been in and out of the side a few times recently. But as a leg spinner, I'm personally very pleased to see her there, and I think the conditions will favour her well. We've got so Charlie Dean and Sarah Glenn can also bat quite well in sort of that 7-8 position. We've got Emma Lamb, who probably would come in the middle order with, again, her power hitting. She strikes the ball so cleanly. I'm looking forward to seeing a really big score from her, hopefully, in this competition. It'd be really, really good for her. And then we've got some of our quicker bowlers, so Em Arlett and Lauren Bell, who have both really, really shone this season. Well, not even this season, this year, really. Getting higher speeds than ever, taking those key wickets when they need to, putting that pressure on. And you can't really have a World Cup squad without Sophie Appleston as the top spin bowler in the world. She offers that experience. We know that even as a tail ender, she can offer runs as well at the very end of the game. But her bowling will be key, and I'll be interested to see how the batters deal with her now that they're all sort of trying new things and getting a little bit more experimental as batting has gone on throughout the years. And then we've got Lauren Filer, who's been pushing that 80 miles an hour mark, which is absolutely huge in women's cricket. So that's really, really exciting, as well as Lindsay Smith offering a bit more leg spin. And she's been taking wickets like mad. So tough competition from that squad, really.
It is a very interesting squad in that, because most of the names, to be honest, pick themselves. Like you mentioned, some of them are even potentially being groomed as part of the leadership group, to be honest. But yeah, like you mentioned earlier, Kate Cross, a surprising omission, at least for neutrals like us. But what's the sentiment been like, and what's the conversation been like back home?
I mean, it's been very, very strange from our sort of perspective as cricket journalists, really, because you'd expect to see her in that squad. Obviously, the conditions out in India and Sri Lanka favour spin, and we've got a lot of promising quicker bowlers, and Kate Cross has had a bit of injury, but she's come back a lot stronger. But it's more her experience off the field. It seems like a shock even to her that she's not even on the plane. I don't know if this is sort of a pivotal moment where we seem to have quite a lot of older players and quite a lot of very young players and not many in the middle. So maybe this is Charlotte Edwards trying to step up and carve that new generation, which is also really important, obviously. So I'm not really sure where that will lie, but I'm sad that she's not there.
And another name we'll have to talk about is Heather Knight. Firstly, coming fresh off an injury, and on top of that, brings in so much of valuable experience over there in that middle order, because it was that lack of experience in some sense that really found them wanting against India in that home series. A fairly disappointing one, so to say, but that's definitely a fantastic addition and a name that you would really want to see back.
Oh, absolutely. I think that series was also to India's credit because they absolutely outperformed England. And it was great to watch, to be quite honest. I'm not necessarily a very patriotic cricket fan. I just like watching good cricket, which some people might hate hearing. But I think that having Heather Knight back is going to be crucial. She's worked really hard on her injury recovery. I cannot wait to see how she performs, maybe without that sort of pressure of captaincy off her shoulders, but obviously she'll still be helping the younger players.
And also, in all fairness, especially while sort of, doing our bit of research about each of these teams, we realize that we've probably been a lot more harsh on the English side than, they probably made it. Because I was looking at some of the numbers and everything, and yeah, England ranked high on top on almost each of these charts. Like, let's just have a few data points out. Firstly, when it comes to batters and the number of batters who've scored more than 500 runs in the last ODI cycle, England have the joint most along with India. They've had 7 different batters who've scored more than 500 runs. And everyone scored that at a strike rate in excess of 70, which once again points to a lot more cohesive unit instead of having just 1 or 2 match winners who are doing well. You've got so many different people raising their hands up and actually winning games for you. How do you look at that batting unit right now? Because we spoke about Amy Jones and Tammy Beaumont at the top. We've got Sophia Dunkley. Alice Capsey herself, sure, she's not been in the greatest of form, at least wasn't in the greatest of form in that India series. But again, in the 100, she wasn't too bad at all. And we know that the kind of potential she possesses, she can really win you more than just a solitary game or two.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at the 15 in the squad, there's a lot of people that could fill that sort of 3 to 6 or even 7 spot. You've obviously got your openers, which are possibly Beaumont and Jones, but then maybe Wyatt Hodge. But then in there, you've got to fit in Dunkley, Emma Lamb, Charlie Dean, who can bat at sort of 7 or 8, and then you've got Alice Capsey, who's quite explosive, Nat, Heather Knight. You're sort of struggling a little bit there. There's a lot of batting power there, which is obviously beneficial because you want people to be able to hit with and against the spin over in India and Sri Lanka. But there's a lot of choices to be made, I think.
100%, a lot of choices to be made. And in fact, that also sort of takes me to my next point. Like, we usually associate India and even Sri Lanka to a major extent with being, fairly spin-friendly surfaces and whatnot. But, we saw the India-Australia series. It wasn't so spin-friendly, firstly. It was fairly flat. You saw batters actually scoring runs for fun. And then add to that, the World Cup's happening in cities like Vizag, Indore, Mumbai. They might not have hosted a lot of women's cricket, but if the men's cricket is anything to go by, then again, we can expect a lot of boundaries, a lot of runs. Given that, then how do you see sort of, the English side adjusting to it? Because you know that this is going to be a fairly batter-friendly tournament. And then you've got bowlers who probably aren't the best when it comes to defensive bowling. They are all aggressive options. Do you think that could potentially be a cause for concern?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they're going to have to be very smart with how they bowl. And I think, like you say, if it's more batter friendly like we have seen recently, it's why you wonder again why Kate Cross is potentially missing out, because she can bowl really, really strongly and quite defensively and create those problems. So I think our young bowlers are going to have to be very clever with how they bowl. I think we might be looking at a rotation of obviously our quicker bowlers. Arla, I think, is going to be crucial in with her Yorkers. I think they're going to be really, really helpful. Obviously, both Laurens in their sort of speed is going to be great, but they've got to make sure that they're absolutely on the money with where they're bowling in the line and the length. Otherwise, there's options there for batters to just go absolutely wild, isn't there?
I mean, either way, I think just the bowling is shaping up really well, right? Because when you just look at the spinners selected, they have 4 specialist spinners. So again, Charlotte, do you think this was keeping in mind that these are Indian and Sri Lankan conditions? It will give them an edge too somewhere?
Yeah, I think the priority is obviously to go for what traditionally the conditions are like. But as we all know, cricket's really unpredictable. Pitches can do anything. They can change on the day. And obviously, we've got a couple of part-time spinners with Alice Capsey and Emma Lamb as well as also potential options if you want to favour going a bit heavier on your batting attack, which may work in their favour. But I do also think pace will be quite essential in this tournament. 50 overs is a long time to bowl for, really.
Exactly. I mean, it definitely cannot be a spirit of minute, kind of strategy over here. In fact, even with a side like India, who sort of deployed a four-spinner strategy in England, they've already reverted back to having more than at least 2, 3 pacers. In the bilateral series versus Australia, we saw that. So clearly, you can't sort of bombard oppositions with spinners and expect that to win you games. And I hope the English side is also probably taking a couple of notes. They themselves have been playing practice games versus New Zealand in Abu Dhabi. But speaking of that, Charlotte, once again, you've got someone like a Charlotte Edwards, who's a legend, coaching the side. There's that transition that's happened fairly late by, for my liking, to be honest, just 3, 4 months ahead of the World Cup. So some might say that, that's probably not enough time for her to sort of develop the side that she might want for the tournament as big as this. But what do you make of that? Someone like her being a part of the side, that is definitely going to play a vital role over there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think having someone like Charlotte involved is absolutely crucial. She understands the game inside and out. Obviously, there are a few sort of different discussions around John Lewis and his role, and obviously the Ashes sort of disaster caused him to sort of step away. And obviously, we don't really know what's happened with that. And there are lots of factors that go into decisions like that, of course. But I do think having Lottie there, who has been in World Cups, who has performed, who has been absolutely crucial in English cricket, and is a great role model, will really, really help the team. Like you say, it's not a long time she's been in the position, but to be honest, she's done a lot of prep work. We've had success against the West Indies, we've had defeat against India, so we've kind of seen both sides of it, which is quite nice. You don't want to go into something off the back of loads and loads of losses, but equally you don't want to go into something off the back of loads and loads of wins as a fairly new coach. You've got to figure out how you fit. And from what I've seen, all of the team seem to really, really fit well with her, which is nice.
Yeah, you spoke about, the batters being aggressive. Even numbers point at that, in terms of how the English side has performed. When we just look at this graphic over here, of course, that it sort of looks at boundary percentage and how many boundaries each side has scored and how have they been, when it comes to milking runs. And that's where a side like England ranking high on top when it comes to something like the non-boundary strike rate, which just shows that they have minimized those dot balls. They have been very clear that just at least keep milking those singles, keep the ball, scoreboard ticking, and things like that have definitely gone in their favor. But the flip side to it is, of course, if you're going to score more runs, it means that your bowlers would also be under pressure to defend these runs and to ensure that they don't concede as many. And that's where someone like a Sarah Glenn, now that's a very interesting selection, because I remember 3 months ago during the series or ahead of the India-England series, Charlotte Edwards was talking about how in her head, Sophie Eccleston and Lindsay Smith are arguably the best spinners in the country. So those two would be featuring in my 11. You've got someone like a Charlie Dean who's been groomed to potentially be a part of that leadership group. She's already led the London Spirit, like you said. So does that leave any room for someone like a Sarah Glenn to be a part of the 11?
It's really tricky, isn't it? In my mind, I think she'll be missing out quite a bit, to be honest. And I think that's mostly because she's not been in and around the team as much over the last maybe year than she used to be. That doesn't mean that she's not a fantastic player. It's just, when you've got other options, it's a little bit tricky. And Charlie Dean certainly offers that all-round experience as well. And I know Sarah Glenn can bat, but when weighing up against these characters that have been in and around the team a little bit more, that might be what sways it. And obviously being a leg spinner, that really opens you up to vulnerabilities as well. It's not an easy skill. You get hit for a lot of runs. You've got to be very, very careful. You've got to be very resilient. And I'm sure that Sarah Glenn is all of those things. It's just a case of having to put that pressure on and deal with that pressure when maybe things are a little bit tricky. And I think that's a lot to ask when you're overseas in a World Cup. It's a lot going on.
And probably another aspect, Charlotte, that really needs to be discussed is the last time I think England really toured, the Indian subcontinent for an ODI series was probably way back in like 2019, which again, can be a matter of concern because their numbers against spin aren't that great and their just performances on subcontinent surfaces aren't that great too. But how do you look into this aspect? Do you see England, being better, adaptable this time around, having played a few of those practice matches in Abu Dhabi, similar conditions, and just getting acclimatized, perhaps?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't realise it'd been that long, but now that you say it, I can't really remember the last time that we'd played over that way. And I'm really excited about it because I love watching cricket in India. I think it's so cool. And I love how into it everybody gets. But I think even the conditions in Abu Dhabi are still slightly different. So there's still a lot to contend with. And yes, you're playing your practice games, but when you're in front of all of those Indian fans, it's a whole other game, isn't it? Especially that England-India game on the 19th of October. That's going to be quite exciting, I think.
Sticking to the bowling unit itself, Charlotte, like once again, Sophie Ecclestone has to be the linchpin. She will definitely be sort of relied upon, not just for wickets, but even to stem the flow of runs from her end. In fact, when we talk about bowlers in the last ODI cycle, Sophie Ecclestone has been phenomenal. Just look at where she's at and how good she's been. She's one of just two bowlers who've conceded at less than 4 runs per over and still averaging less than 30 balls per wicket. So just the frequency and the consistency that she's shown across surfaces, across conditions, across years, like that, like how do you look at Sophie Ecclestone? Like I don't even look at her as a player. She's a phenomena, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. And she's showing no signs of stopping or even slowing down with those skills. She looks like she's constantly trying to get better, constantly evolving. She's clearly trying lots of new things because obviously all cricketers have a wealth of footage and knowledge. So they'll all be looking at how they can play against Sophie Ecclestone. But she's clearly doing enough just to keep her reputation, keep her name going strong. She's clearly very, very good. Obviously, there's a little bit of stuff in the press earlier this year where she decided to take a little break from cricket. So hopefully having that break will actually stand her in better stead, give her a little bit of time away, and then she can come back a bit stronger. I think quite a few of us were actually a little bit wondering about whether she would end up playing or whether she would keep with the break. But who can say no to a World Cup?
I mean, 100%. I would have been very, very, very surprised, and not in a good way, had Sophie Ecclestone not been a part of the World Cup. Because again, even as part of or as part of a side or supporting a side that probably she isn't a part of, the World Cup would be poorer without her. You need someone like her to be a part of it.
Charlotte, do you have any players that you are absolutely looking forward to seeing and players to watch out for our viewers?
For me, it's always Charlie Dean. I love Charlie Dean. I think she might be one of my favourite players. I just think she offers so much and she's so young. However, I'd also be looking at obviously Sophie Ecclestone, but that goes without saying, really. And like we mentioned, maybe looking at Heather Knight and how she steps up here, because I think it's going to be a really good test for her. And also, as she's obviously a little bit older and a little bit more experienced, it will be a good test to see how she fits in, like where her role is going forward as well. So I think it'll be a crucial World Cup for her, really. Whether she stays in that England squad or not post-captaincy, I think that'll be absolutely crucial. I also think we're going to see a lot from Lauren Filer. I know we've had bits and bobs with a bit of injury in there as well, but I think Lauren Filer is going to be quite exciting. There's a lot to shout about, like we've said, in this squad.
Charlotte, we've got 4 predictions that we need from you. One is the highest run scorer, one is the highest wicket taker, and both for England. Then the top 4, who do you think would feature in the semi-finals of the World Cup? And who do you think would be the eventual winner of the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup?
Okay, so top run scorer for England. I think it's gonna be probably Nat Sciver-Brunt. I think it's gonna be Nat Sciver-Brunt. It feels like an obvious shout, but I think it has to be. And then wicket taker wise, I think it's going to have to be Sophie Ecclestone. Again, it's a fairly obvious shout, but I also think that Lindsay Smith's going to offer a lot because I think she, again, fairly new to the international circuit, so I think that will be crucial for her. I always like to give my predictions as less obvious shouts because I feel like there are lots of people I always like an underdog as well. And then World Cup wise in the semi-finals, I think the 4 teams we're going to see are Australia, India, South Africa and England. With New Zealand as an honourable mention. I honestly, when I was thinking about this, I was torn between whether it be England or New Zealand in that.
Okay.
And I do think the winner is going to be Australia. They just seem to be miles ahead. I'm so sorry.
That's perfectly fine. We're also trying our best not to jinx the sides that we support, so that is understandable. And we do agree with you. Australia right now, just the gulf between them and the next best side is so wide. Sometimes you really wonder how would any side ever get to competing with them properly again. But 100% agree with you there. On that note of optimism, I guess, let us wrap up this preview for England, and fingers crossed, of course, the English girls actually do well and do their fans proud in the upcoming World Cup. Going from one island nation to another, it's time for us to now talk about Sri Lanka, a side that will definitely be one to watch out for, least of all because they are also sort of the unofficial host of the World Cup. They will be hosting plenty of games. In fact, they'll be hosting 6 of their own games. So that's already a very interesting coincidence in some sense. And to talk about that and much more, we've got Estelle Vasudevan joining us. Hey Estelle, how are you? How's everything back home?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
All good. Loads of talk happening about the World Cup, and we've been busy doing just that. So I don't think we could have been happier. Let's just straight dive into our conversation. We'll start off with the fact fight. When you look at how it's been, they've played 31 games. They won 11 of them. Unfortunately, 4 of them are also no result. So that leaves them with a win percentage of nearly 35. In terms of recent form, they did lose the last couple of games they played, which was, of course, way back in May as part of the Tri-Series, along with India and South Africa. And highest run scorer in the ODI cycle, no surprises there, it's Shamari Attapattu, 1,252 runs at an average in excess of 40 and a strike rate in excess of 90. And when it comes to the highest wicket taker, it's Kavisha Dilhadi, 26 wickets at a strike rate of 38 and an economy of 5.2. While looking at these numbers, an interesting point that I did note was Kavisha Dilhadi and Chamri Attapattu, both of them are a part of the top 5 highest wicket takers and highest run scorers, clearly showing, how much or how important they are to the setup, of course. Estelle, of course, starting with you in terms of the squad and the makeup overall, how are you seeing the shaping up ahead of the World Cup?
Yeah, I think there weren't too many major surprises in that squad that Sri Lanka have named. As you rightly mentioned, they haven't played since May. So not much really for the selectors to look at in terms of, form as such. Of course, there's been domestic cricket that's been going on, but, it's not the same as playing international cricket. They performed well in that tri-series in May, and I suppose a lot of the selection has been based on performances there in terms of the fringe players, because as you guys would know, like if you look at a Sri Lankan squad, you basically have like 8 to 9 players who are constants. They have been throughout the last few years. So it's about those additional players that you need to add into the side, and in terms of that, I think there weren't really major surprises. A lot of experience in the side. You're seeing the likes of Udeshika Prabodhini, Karanavira coming in, but you've also got a lot of youngsters to talk about as well, right? You've got Deomi Vihanga, as you guys would have seen at the Under-19 World Cup. And also inexperienced players in Piumi Vatsala, Malki Madara who have come in. So all in all, I think it's a balanced squad, but I do also think that this might be kind of the last opportunity in terms of 50 over World Cups for some of these players. And in particular, Deomi Vihanga has kind of caught the eye with her spin bowling, but she's also a capable batter, and that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why she's kind of been fast-tracked into the national side, in that she's got that power game in her. We didn't see her perform per se in that tri-series where she got the opportunity. We didn't see her getting runs, but she is someone who has a lot of promise. It'll be interesting to see how they fit her into the side, and the same goes for Malki Madara as well. She was impressive in that series against India and South Africa. I think particularly the ability to bowl at the death was impressive, because she did use up her slow deliveries, and she was very, very, I would say, intelligent in the way she used her change-ups in that competition. But you've got Udeshika back in the side, right? And you've got Achini Kulasurya, who is also a senior bowler. So both of them, I'd be very interested to see how they fit into the side, because if you look at the batting lineup for Sri Lanka, basically you've got 6 to 7 batters who are set, and they will most likely feature in almost every game. So does Deomi Vihanga come in as an all-rounder, or is she being played as a pure bowler? That'll be the question. And as I said, for Malki Madara as well, how they go with combinations. Sri Lanka often have preferred to go with the one pace bowler. In that case, you would think that Udeshika Prabodhini might be the one that they hand the ball to. But if not, I think she has shown in the limited opportunities that she's gotten that she's capable of, producing something different for the side.
And Estelle, just to quickly add here about the aspect that Sri Lanka hasn't really played a lot of cricket, right, since May, which would obviously be playing in the minds of the players. But the very fact that they're co-hosting this World Cup with India gives them that sort of home advantage, and just playing so many matches here. So how do you look at this aspect? Not enough game practice, but hey, we're playing our matches on home soil, so that gives us a little bit of an advantage.
I don't know if it gives a massive advantage, because if you look at the most recent tournament that they played was very batting friendly conditions. So I suppose that in terms of that, it does kind of give an advantage to teams that are batting heavy, and a lot of the bigger teams are, right. Sri Lanka in the past has kind of shown in the fact that they've had this massive lineup of spinners who've been able to trouble other teams. So if conditions are not spin friendly, then it might not necessarily be a massive advantage, although I do believe that they would prefer to play in batting tracks as well, because their batting has come up in the last couple of years, and they haven't really been playing spin too well, although they've got good spinners in the lineup. In terms of being hosts, I think there's always that little bit of the comfort you feel, right? And also the fact that they don't have to travel a lot. I mean, they will be traveling to Guwahati and then later to the DY Patel for 2 games. But other than that, they'll be based in Sri Lanka. They're playing the warm-ups in Sri Lanka, the training here. So majority of their time will be spent in familiar surroundings, which in that sense, mentally at least, that is an advantage, and it gives them, that kind of safety and comfort that they're used to, because these are the places that they train in. They're in and out of these areas. Home is always accessible. If you need a small break, your family is always accessible. So those things maybe, do give them a slight advantage.
And sticking to the bowling itself, I say, I want to bring up 2 data points. When it comes to Sri Lanka and the way they've performed in the last ODI cycle, like you mentioned, their batting has definitely sort of, picked up pace and they have done well. But not sure if the same can be said about their bowling. Firstly, in terms of how they fared versus, the other World Cup participants, you look at that beat, in terms of being defensive or attacking. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka haven't been on the right end of the spectrum. And of course, some of it is also down to, the kind of surfaces they've played at. And along with it, another data point to just sort of delve deeper into is the fact that none of the Sri Lankan bowlers have picked in excess of 30 wickets in the last ODI cycle. Once again, slight benefit of doubt, they might not have played as many games as some of, your more popular sort of competitors. But that's where you think it is important for the new names to sort of step up. And which is by tying back to what we were talking about earlier, you have someone like an Udeshika Prabhudini coming in, or even, Achini Kulasurya. You have those experienced campaigners, but you would still need these newcomers to sort of come in and actually ensure that they are the ones taking the baton forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you look at the format of the competition as well, is you can't be reliant on a couple of bowlers. Like there is a very real possibility that 1 or 2 injuries can happen during the competition. So you always need to be prepared, even if you are not in the first choice playing 11, to step up and take on that responsibility. But if I look at those 2 players in particular that we mentioned, I think they have shown that they're capable of doing that. So that aspect of it is covered, but it'll be about role play. I think there's no certainties, right, in the game. Udeshika Prabodhini may have represented Sri Lanka for decades, but at the same time they have to pick the players who they feel are most suited to the games and the conditions, as well as who's been in form and who's bowling well and showing good rhythm in the nets as well, right, and who's performing in matches. So all of that will come into play. I don't think it's a given that anybody will be featuring, but as there'll be a tendency to go for the more experienced players who've performed for Sri Lanka in the past. But always, you've got to be ready to take on that responsibility whenever it's presented to you. And those 2 players who we mentioned, who I think if you look at the squad are the most likely to kind of the younger players to kind of feature, they've shown that they're capable of it, right, and they've shown that they can take on that responsibility.
And coming to the batting as well, SL, of course, you've got someone like Chamari, who's sort of been the flag bearer of Sri Lankan cricket when it comes to the women's side of things. But how heartening is it to see some of the other names that have cropped up, in the last few years, especially that last ODI cycle? There's someone like Harshita, there's someone like even Vishmi Gunaratne, who sort of really stepped up Do you think that this could potentially be that World Cup where you see more match winners sort of really, putting their hand up even with the bat in hand?
Yeah, I think that probably is one of the main goals that the coaching staff has also worked on, right? What do you do if Chamari Athapattu doesn't make runs? And to be fair to the others, I mean, this can be seen as like a positive and a negative. In the last year, I think in the last 12 months, 4 or 5 of those batters have outscored Athapattu. So there have been other players stepping up, particularly the likes of Kavisha Dilhari and Harshita Samaravikrama, Vishmi Gunaratna, who you mentioned. You've also got like Nilakshi De Silva, Anushka Sanjeevani getting runs. Of course, like if you look at their overall records, you're not going to see, massive numbers, right? You're not going to see 40 plus averages or, them scoring at a strike rate of 90 plus. But it's been a growing thing with these batters, and that is good to see. On the flip side, Athapattu has not been in good form in international cricket over the last year or so. I think since that Asia Cup final, it's been a bit of a downward trend from her, but promising that she's recently been in the CPL and was player of the series there, so she got some runs under her belt. Of course, coming into a World Cup and knowing that you're basically carrying the hopes of a team, puts a different kind of pressure on you. And no matter who you are and what type of player that you are, that is a weight to bear, right? And I know she has she relishes that opportunity and she likes having that pressure, but it can take a toll as well. So it's important that you have other players stepping in. I think the ODI format in particular will give the opportunity of players being given that little bit of leeway to maybe settle in and score runs instead of having to go from the word go in T20 cricket. So I think we might see more batters stepping up in this competition, and certainly that will be what Sri Lanka will hope for as well.
And another player, Estelle, I really wanted to talk to you about was Kavisha Dilari itself, right? I mean, a genuine all-rounder in the truest sense. She obviously brings in a lot of balance. Again, for you, do you think she's going to be that sort of a glue that just holds the batting and the bowling unit and just be that flexible sort of a floater across both the departments?
I think she's a massively important player in this side because, as you said, she is a genuine all-rounder, right? She's going to give you 10 overs and she's going to be able to bat in that top 5. But also, I think one of the big skills that she has is that she is one of those players who does, particularly with the bat, she's not a player who allows the bowling side to settle. And I think, I don't have the exact numbers, but if you look at that tri-series in May, there was a game that she missed due to injury. And you could see when Sri Lanka were chasing that they missed that type of player who would come in and from the word go, score at a runner ball. Doesn't let, the scoring rate get far beyond the side. And she's just that busy player. She's not, well, she can clear the boundary, but it's not like she goes for every, she goes for shots right from the word go, but she just keeps the scoreboard moving so that the pressure doesn't build. And I think that helps a lot because Sri Lanka have a lot of accumulators and a lot of batters who tend to take a bit of time, 10 to 12 deliveries to kind of get into their stride. So when she's on the other end, that just releases the pressure for the other batter. And I'd like to see her batting with the likes of Harshita Samaravikrama because she has shown that, she just releases that pressure that much more for players like Harshita, who is then allowed to kind of play her natural game, right? Where she holds one end up and she's able to go later in the inning. So Kavisha, I think, in the batting side is massively important in that way because she's that unique kind of player, right, who can score quickly for Sri Lanka. In terms of the ball, she's shown that she can bowl at any given time and she's been one of the wicket takers for Sri Lanka. So that is another area of concern, I think, if you look at the Sri Lankan side. Defensive bowlers versus, wicket-taking bowlers. And she is one of those bowlers who can take wickets. So that'll be the other crucial role that she plays for the side. So basically, it's like, a 2-in-1 player, right?
But Estelle, again, just focusing on the pace department side of things, like how is that shaping up for you? And this time around, do you think they can really pack a punch and actually challenge a lot of teams?
Yeah, so like I said, it's very interesting to see this pace bowling attack because Sri Lanka generally prefer to go with that one pacer, right? But this time they've picked 3 in their squad. Malki Madara has been really impressive. So I would see her as kind of the second in line in that quick bowling lineup. I say quick bowling, but they don't really bowl that quick. But yeah, so Udeshika Prabodhini is coming in after injury, so it'll be interesting to see how she goes. Of course, is that, type of bowler who can pick up early wickets if she can get the ball to move, and games are being played at night, right? So that's going to be interesting to see as well. Achini Kulasurya, I feel, will be kind of relegated to the drinks for most of the games, but I could be wrong. It could be, that she has shown good form in the nets and in domestic cricket, and she does find herself in the starting 11. I'd again be very interested to see whether they do actually go for the two pace bowlers, because I think they experimented a little with Manudi Nanakara, the under 19 captain, in the last couple of series, in that she is a medium pacer who can bat, and they kind of experimented with having her and one genuine fast bowler in the side, but she's not in the squad. So they don't have that kind of all-rounder option that they can use in terms of someone who's had success. You've got like Piyumi Vatsala, who's also a bit of a medium pacer, but it's difficult to see whether she does actually feature in the side. So I'll be interested to see if they do go with the two quicks, or whether they still prefer to go with one and pack the side with spinners.
It's interesting that you brought Vatsala's name, because that was actually something I was also wondering. Like you mentioned, first of all, Sri Lanka have historically been a lot more sort of reliant on their spinners. They've usually deployed that 4 spinners, sometimes even 5 spinner strategy. But we know that this time around with the World Cup, the kind of venues that we'll be seeing, Indore, Guwahati, Vizag, Mumbai, all of these are batter-friendly surfaces. So might not have a lot of purchase for spinners. That's why, your medium pacers, especially the ones who just bowl wicket to wicket, they become a lot more crucial. So how do you see this 11 sort of stacking up? Like, do you see them once again going with the same 4 spinner strategy, or do you see, them coming up with an additional pacer and someone like a Vatsala instead of, an Achini Kulasurya, or even Udeshika Prabodhini for that matter?
Yeah, but the interesting thing is they will be playing 7 of their games in Colombo, right? So the conditions in Colombo are going to be the important thing, I think, for them in deciding how they want to go about things. Because what we've seen over the recent past for the men's side is that it's been very spinner friendly, right? And that is, I think, on purpose. It is what is being requested by the team management. On the flip side, what little women's cricket that we've seen internationally in Colombo, in Dabulla, in Pallakale has been batting friendly. So I think if it is to stay that way, Sri Lanka will prefer to go with 2 quicks. And they've always got Chamari and Kavisha, who will fill up the gaps in terms of spinners, right? So they can go with the 2 quicks, 2 frontline spinners, and then have Chamari and Kavisha filling up the gaps. So that gives them that much more flexibility. I think even the likes of Deomi Vihanga, if she can get things right with the bat, then that adds another kind of element to that Sri Lankan side, because it gives them flexibility in terms of the number of bowlers that they can pick. Because as you said, in batting friendly conditions, right, you don't want to go in with just 5 bowlers or 5 options with the ball. It's always nice to have those extra options in the bag. I doubt that there'll be more than, the 2 medium pacers, but, it all depends on how the Colombo surfaces will play. I think if it's batting friendly and if it's flat, they might want that type of combination, because as we've seen, like the likes of Malki Madara have been very good in the death, and you would prefer that type of bowling setup rather than having the spinners trying to bowl at the death, and the risk of them getting hit is higher, right? If I look at that Sri Lankan lineup, I would expect Chamari obviously to play. Whether she opens or whether she bats lower down the order, we don't know, because we saw them experimenting with that. If I was picking the spot, I would open with her. You've got Hasini Pereira, you've got Vishmi Gunaratne, you've got Harshita Samaravikrama, then you've got Kavisha, you've got Nilakshi, and you've got Anushka Sanjeevani. So that's your 7 batters. If you look at the way Sri Lanka have been picking teams so far, you've got 7 batters, right? So then Deomi Vihanga will have to, if she's playing, will have to play as a specialist spinner and just add that little bit of batting depth to the side. So that'll be interesting to see. So if we've got those 7 batters, then you've got Deomi at 8. You've got maybe Dasanayaka at 9. You've got Udeshika, and then you've got Malki Madara. That could be a combination that they go for. But it'd be interesting to see, because they picked Inoka Ranavira as well, right? So Inoka is coming in with a huge load of experience it's very difficult to see you picking a player like that and then not picking her in the 11. But it been Sugandhika Kumari Dasanayake has, like, she's been good for Sri Lanka throughout, like whether it's T20 cricket or ODI cricket. So that'll be the question that they'll want to answer. And in terms of Deumi, Chamari and Kavisha both bowl off spin. So then Deumi Vihanga's off spin also might see it as surplus. We don't know. So I mean, if it was up to me, I would be picking her because of the fact that number one, she's bowled well in the opportunities that she's been given, and number two, she can give you that X factor in the lower middle order.
And still talking about, again, the last ODI cycle itself, while it cannot be denied that, Sri Lanka's batting has been on an upward curve, when we look at how they have fared in general, unfortunately, it still shows that there is a bit of a gulf between Sri Lanka and the rest of the teams. When we look at, the differential between the batting run rate and the bowling run rate, Sri Lanka, unfortunately, aren't exactly on top of that list. In fact, they rank number 8 when it comes to the 8 World Cup participants. And that's where, once again, the question arises. The team is already progressing well. Do you think it is also down to them getting now more games for them to be able to sort of, increase the pace at which they start developing these players, and also they grow themselves individually too?
Yeah, it has to be, right? Because if you look at that Sri Lanka had basically a break during COVID. They didn't play for nearly 2 years. But since coming back from them, since they've had regular games, you've seen that progress. And I think the main reason they qualified directly for this World Cup is because they were able to beat New Zealand, right? That was one team who Sri Lanka were not expected to beat. And then if they hadn't, they would have fallen into that kind of a system where they would have had to qualify for the tournament. But since they were able to beat New Zealand, they were able to qualify automatically. And all of that comes from the fact that they've been playing regular cricket, right? That is why I think it's very unfortunate that they haven't had any games in the run-up to this World Cup. I mean, May is a long time ago, right? If you look at it and you're looking at other teams, I think barring Bangladesh, every team is playing some sort of cricket or has played some sort of cricket in the last month. India perhaps have had like the best preparation. They played England and played Australia. They're playing Australia as well. So they've all had kind of some good match practice coming into this World Cup, whereas Sri Lanka basically coming in on the one side, if you want to be extremely positive about it, it's like other teams are not going to know what to expect from Sri Lanka. But the reality is they haven't been playing, they haven't had any game time. Forget quality opposition. They haven't had any game time since May. So that could be a massive stumbling block. And I say that particularly because if you look at Sri Lanka's schedule, right, they've got India up first, then they play Australia, then they play England, then they play South Africa. So you're basically saying their first 4 games are against the 4 teams that you would expect to be the top 4 teams in the competition, right? I think barring New Zealand, who could, replace one of them, those are the 4 teams that you would expect to be making it to the semi-final. You would be expecting to be like the top teams of the tournament. So their first 4 games are against those teams. So there's no room for them to kind of take it easy and come into the tournament. So the fact that they haven't played any, competitive games over the last few months, I think is going to be a massive challenge. Hopefully they can, sort something out during the warm-ups. But 2 warm-up games, there's not a lot that you can do, right?
But Estelle, so far in all of our conversations with guests, for different teams, one team that they've actually pegged as dark horses is Sri Lanka. So we'll obviously, get your predictions on that too. But again, your players to watch out for and players you're really excited to see this World Cup for Sri Lanka?
Well, to watch out for, I think I've said this at every tournament. People have asked me. It's Harshita Samaravikram. I think she's gone from strength to strength since that World Cup in South Africa where she got runs, just growing in confidence. And I think what I like about her personally is the fact that she understands her game and she understands what she is capable of and what she can do. And that is important. I think it's important not to try to, you can see Chamari Atapattu batting on the other end and think I can go after the bowling as well, but you can't match that, right? It's important to understand and accept that my game is different. I can achieve similar results, but I have to go about it in a different way. And I think Harshita is someone who really understands her game in that way. From the batting front, I would say she and Kavisha Dilhari are certainly the two to watch. I'm very excited to see someone like Malki Madara if she does feature, because it was very good to see how she bowled in that try series. Just the way she was able to peg things back in the latter overs, using her slower deliveries, bowls a good Yorker as well, back of the hand, slow ball. Lots of variations in her arsenal, and even with the new ball, she was able to get some movement. So that's another person. I think you don't. Malki Madara is not someone who you saw a lot of in domestic cricket or who was getting like tons of wickets, but obviously she had something that the management liked, and once she's been picked, she has really, I think, repaid that faith in the way that she's gone about things. So she is definitely one, and the other one is obviously Vihanga, right? Vihanga is the one with, I think, the most promise if we look beyond the likes of Kavisha Dilhari, Vishmi Gunaratne. So in terms of a modern day cricketer, I think she has the most promise in that side. So she'll be another one I'm excited to see.
And Esther, just coming to the predictions itself, this is going to be an interesting one. So let's get your thoughts on the highest run getter, highest wicket taker. This is again for Sri Lanka. Your top four, from this World Cup, and the most elusive question of all, the winner of the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup 2025. All yours.
Right. So the highest run scorer, I would pick Harshita Samaravikrama. I think she's been in good form. She's been consistent. So it's difficult to look past her. Although, despite saying that, I think if Atapattu gets more runs, Sri Lanka will go further in the tournament, right? There's no denying that. But I would think that Harshita will be the one who scores the most number of runs. Wicket takers, I'm going to say Kavisha, because she's the one who's kind of been that wicket-taking option for Sri Lanka. Semi-finalists, I'm not going to be biased. So I will say for Sri Lanka, semi-final looks like a step too far in this format, because it's just 7 games against 7 quality opposition. You've got to have at least 4 wins, right, to go through. So I think that'll be tough for them. Particularly, as I mentioned, just coming into the tournament and playing those 4 teams up front, right? So I would go with the semi-finalists, the most obvious two, Australia and India. South Africa, I think, to me, are the dark horses in this competition, because they've got a really solid side. Make it to the semis and anything can happen, right? And I will go with New Zealand as my 4th team. I think they are a team that's capable of doing much more than people are expecting, who thought they would come in and win that T20 World Cup, right? I don't think anybody did. I think even on finals day, I don't think anybody thought that they would go all the way. But they did it. They've got the experience in the squad. So those would be my 4 semi-finalists. In terms of who's going to win,
I love the
I
pause.
mean,
I love the pause.
it's very, very difficult. I think that it's most likely that it'll be Australia or India. But I would not count South Africa out, because they've got a really, really solid batting lineup, right? They've got players who can clear the boundary. Like Dirksen is, I think, one of the most promising players we've seen over the last, I don't know, decade. She's been absolutely brilliant because of the skill set she has. Can turn a game, whether she has to be defensive or attacking. So I would say they are the big dark horses, but winners, difficult to look past Australia or India.
Yeah, I guess on that note, it is time for us to wrap up this preview. Thank you so much for being a part of it, Estelle. It's been a very insightful chat talking about Sri Lanka. And fingers crossed, Julia Price, whom we spoke to a while earlier, actually had Sri Lanka as part of the top four, like a sneaky chance of them making it to the top four. So you never know. There's, like they say never. So fingers crossed that, we see Sri Lanka spring a few surprises. And it's now time to talk about the Kiwis down under, the defending champions when it comes to the T20 format. They sure have a thing or two to talk about the ODIs as well. Of course, we've got none other than Frankie McKay joining us to talk about the squad and much more. Hey, Frankie, how are you? How's everything back home?
Oh, hey guys, thanks for having me on. Yeah, things are good down in New Zealand. It's starting to warm up, getting close to our own home summer. So very, very exciting. And of course, a World Cup just around the corner that hopefully the White Ferns, they can bring that trophy home and have both of them sitting in the cabinet. So yeah, some very excited New Zealand fans back here.
Of course, we will be talking about the squads and much more in greater detail. Before that, Neha, could you just walk us through the fact five? How have the Kiwis fared in the last ODI cycle?
Yeah, actually, I think it's been quite an interesting journey for the White Ferns, right? When you look at the last ODI cycle, the last they played an ODI was, of course, versus Sri Lanka way back in March, which could be, sort of weighing down. And then the unit hasn't played together, at least the ODI side of things. And as we talk right now, there is the warm ups and all of that happening. And just to put their performance in the last ODI cycle into perspective, they've played 29 matches, having won 11 of them. And that loss, those 14 losses obviously does stick out a little, but it's important to acknowledge that this is a transitioning side. And I think we'll get Frankie's thoughts on it as our conversation proceeds too. But then that, is a cause for concern. The recent form, though, again, being that sort of a mixed bag, and hopefully as the World Cup, sort of unfolds, they will be able to pull up a few important wins, as they see their campaign through. The highest run getter, though, for them in this ODI cycle has been Amelia Kerr with 927 runs at a striking average of 48.8. And she's been that sort of a fulcrum again in the batting side of things. Although, there's the tendency of looking at the more obvious choices and say a Sophie Devine or a Susie Bates. You've had Amelia Kerr also, sort of step up and do her thing. And as for the highest wicket taker, it is the other Kerr sister. You have Jess Kerr there with 30 wickets at an amazing economy of 4.1. So all in all, yeah, New Zealand did have that sort of an interesting ICC, ODI championship cycle. So frankly, to obviously just kickstart our discussion, like what did you make of, New Zealand from that last ODI World Cup, all the bilaterals they've played onto this World Cup? Just your impressions on how the squad's shaping up?
Well, it's a little bit like you said. It was pretty mixed, and I think for a little while there, New Zealand were actually a little concerned that they might miss that automatic qualification for the World Cup. I think there was some genuine concern in the camp that that could happen, but the way that they've been able to stick together to get a bit of belief in the group about what they're doing, and I think after the last World Cup, it was a real time of change. There were a lot of new players that came in. There was almost that changing of the guard, moved some of the older players on, brought in some young players. And so they've had a World Cup cycle to bed into not just the White Ferns, but international cricket. So the fact they've had that kind of time in the seat, they've had their time to learn their craft a little bit more. You've seen players like a Georgia Plymouth. She's now notched up her first one-day international 100. You're seeing players come in and make a genuine impact. I think they're actually in a really good place. So yeah, there's probably been some little form concerns. There's definitely been moments where hasn't all gone to plan. There's been strings of losses in a row, but probably the biggest thing is actually the T20 format. The fact that they've gone away, they've gone to a World Cup, they've had success with quite a similar group of players that they're going to take away to this World Cup. And it's just belief. I think they've worked really hard over the last 4 years, a lot on their skill set, a lot on conditioning, the fitness aspect of it. And to see that kind of come together at that T20 World Cup, I think actually just was the moment that they really did believe, we can. It's not just that we'll compete on the world stage. We can actually dominate. We can actually win these close games, win the big moments, win competition games, win a World Cup. So I think when you put that experience in the back pocket of your players, then the form over the last 4 years doesn't really matter too much. I think they're in a really good position right now to have a good crack at this World Cup. Possibly the only thing that is a little bit of a worry for them coming out of a New Zealand winter. They haven't played a lot of cricket. There was a New Zealand A tour that went away to the UK, which is great for a number of players that were on that tour. There was a camp that was held in Chennai, and I think there were about 10 players who went on that, which is great. You've had various players come in and out of franchise cricket, of county cricket. So there's definitely been some cricketing opportunities, but it hasn't been the White Ferns as a whole. And of course, it's been freezing back here in New Zealand over the winter. I know they've been working really hard to try and replicate playing in hot conditions, but it'll definitely be a challenge to go from home conditions to India and Sri Lanka and be able to hit the ground running. I think the cool thing with this World Cup squad for New Zealand is they've kind of got the extremes sorted. So you've got players, I mean, Sophie Devine, the captain, she's announced it's going to be her last time captaining the side, the one-day format. She's going to her 5th World Cup alongside Susie Bates. It feels like those two have been playing for forever. You've got the experience in Leah Tahuhu, who is going to her 4th World Cup. Then you've got the complete opposite end of things. You've got Polly Ingalls, Bella James, Flora Devonshire, Brie Illing all going to their first World Cup event. Then, as you mentioned, Eden Carson and Izzy Gaze, they've made their ODI debuts in this last World Cup cycle. And so this will be their first one-day World Cup. Then you get that little bit of a mix again. Your Maddie Green and your Brooke Halliday going to be really important through that middle order for New Zealand. They bring about that I guess that experience, that stability through there. They've been there, they've done that, they've played some cricket. Then you've got your Jess Kerr and your Rosemary Meir as your seam bowling options, who haven't had a lot of World Cup experience, but have been in and around the group for a really long time. So perhaps you look at them as this could be their time to really shine. And I guess the scariest thing I look at is, Millie Kerr, she's going to her 3rd ODI World Cup. She's only 24. She's the leading run getter for the last World Cup cycle. She seems like she takes wickets for fun. She's super experienced. She's got all the skills under the sun. And you think, gosh, we could be talking about her going to another 3 World Cups on top of that with how young she still is. So I just think when you look at the side, it's really well balanced. You've got a couple of wicket-keeping options. I mean, Maddie Green as well. She's worn the gloves for New Zealand before. You've got the off-spinner of Eden Carson. You've got Maddie Green, very versatile again, part-time off-spinner. Susie Bates, part-time off-spinner. Then you've got your left-arm spin option in Flora Devonshire. And then you've got, of course, Millie Kerr bowling leg spin and wrong-ins. And then in your seam attack, finally, New Zealand's got a left-arm seamer back in Brie Illing. She is definitely one to watch. Lots of excitement. You've got your swing bowler in Jess Kerr. You've got out-and-out pace in Leah Tahuhu and Rosemary Meir. And, the woman right there, Sophie Devine, the way that she has bowled in the last year, she is going to be crucial to this New Zealand lineup. Yes, she'll provide runs as well, but when she is bowling well and they can get a lot of overs out of her, they can get her bowling up top, swinging the new ball, coming back, taking pace off, bowling knuckleballs, bowling at the death. When she bowls well, she just adds such a balance to that New Zealand lineup. And it means that they can afford to play an extra batter, which I think in the conditions they're going into is going to be crucial. So I love it on paper. I love the fact that there's some players that will be really disappointed at not being in that squad, that would think that they could have been there, maybe should have been there, or were there or thereabouts. I think that's a good sign that cricket's in a good place in your country when, there's another 3 or 4 players that very easily could have found themselves in that side.
And now talking about the side itself, Frankie, there are a few names who've been picked who probably weren't on top of everyone's heads. Flora Devonshire, for one, definitely comes to mind. As neutrals, we were definitely surprised because Fran Jonas is someone we were also sort of looking forward to seeing as part of the setup. How's the sentiment been down there? Was it a bit of a surprise for you as well when you saw that selection, or you saw that coming?
It's always that hold your breath moment when it comes to selection, because you never quite know exactly how it's going to go. And I don't think it'd be fair to Flora to go as far as to say that she's a bolter into the team. She'd made her T20 debut, the last series played at home. So you knew she was there or thereabouts. And she was probably the one that was most shocked. I think when she talked about when she got the call, she almost fell off her chair. So I don't think the rest of us were necessarily surprised. I think Fran Jonas she's still only 21. That's the terrifying thing. She played a World Cup, home World Cup last cycle, and she was only 17 at the time. So to think she's still only 21, there's a lot of cricket for her left to play. She would probably admit that she hasn't been at her best the last year or two. There's just been a couple of little technical things that have slipped in that have meant she's struggled to have that same control, struggled to turn the ball as much as she would like. And then the thing that she's coming up against with Flora Devonshire is the all-round capabilities. So Fran Jonas is an out-and-out bowler. She's working hard to do batting, but she is an out-and-out bowler. Whereas in Flora, the way she goes about her cricket is just, it's really exciting. She's kind of that live wire that she can do something really special in the field. She throws herself around. She's a really good athlete. Another left-handed batter, which I think is really useful to have. She plays that really fearless style of cricket too. She just takes the game on. I mean, like every left-hander, loves hitting cover drives, hits beautifully over extra cover. Of course, loves cow corner and square leg when bowlers get into the pad. So she's just one that is fun to watch. She's fun to have around the group.
And talking about the batting itself, Frank, you spoke about Sophie Levan in particular. What she brings to the table is something very few players do in international cricket, especially. Scoring in excess of 500 runs in the last ODI cycle at a strike rate above 90. That's not a lot of. There's not a lot of batters who've done that. And in fact, she's the only batter who's done that from New Zealand. And that's the bigger question, right? You've got Susie Bates, you've got Amelia Curd. They all are excellent accumulators. They score runs, but unfortunately, when you look at the strike rate side of things, with the way ODI cricket and cricket in general has progressed, gone are the days when 220, 230, 240 were scores that were considered par. Now you need a 270, 280, and you might still be under threat. So then, how do you look at that? And do you think the New Zealand team is there right now, or is equipped enough right now to sort of make that transition?
Yeah, well, gosh, looking at that India-Australia series that's just been played, gosh, I thought 400 was going to get run down at one point. So that to me just shows how far the women's game has come. And that probably will be the challenge for New Zealand if they get on surfaces that are just flat and are not offering a lot for bowlers. Have they got players that can really take the game on, that can score at that 90 plus strike rate? Have they got players that can come in and play a role, not necessarily be scoring 70, 80 plus, but can they come in and go 25 off 10 or 15 balls and make those little impacts? And I think that's been a big thing that the side's been working on, is that probably there's been a little bit of safety first at times. And I think that comes off the back of not having a lot of success for patches during your one-day competitions. And you get a little bit gun shy around, well, we got bowled out for 100, or we had a bad day and we didn't get to 200 for 3 games in a row. So there's a little bit of that safety, that hesitancy. But I think with the way they played that T20 World Cup, I think they've been able to blow the shackles off a little bit, that there is that freedom in the group. And that again is that mix of age and experience. I think it makes it so much easier. I mean, a Georgia Plummer loves to score quickly. We saw that T20 World Cup. She just took the game on. She's prepared to use her feet. She's prepared to try and score 360. She's prepared to go over the top. She's going to be really important in that White Ferns lineup. It looks like potentially, against the new ball could be the best time to bat. So it's not necessarily that you set yourself up to bat long and to bat deep. It's actually, how do you have an impact when you're in the middle, especially if temperatures are going to be touching 40 degrees. You actually don't want your players necessarily batting for 40, 45 overs. How can you have that impact in a little bit less time? And I just think they're really well set up for it. I mean, Susie Bates has got all the experience in the world. Georgia Plummer, I think, finds a really nice mix of just looking to take the game on. Nearly Kerr is more your technician, but I think the way she goes about things, she can score really quickly. It's just getting her in positions where she can do that, where she can manipulate the field really well as well, and run teams off their feet in tough conditions. Then that middle order is going to be crucial. Your Maddie Green, your Brooke Halliday, your Sophie Devine. If those three continue piling on the runs as they have been and doing it at a good rate, New Zealand's set up perfectly, because then you've got your hitters to come. Izzy Gaze looks to score really quickly. Jess Kerr, the way she goes about her batting now. I mean, Leah Tahuhu hits the ball a mile. Then even your players who might not necessarily be in your first choice 11, your Bella James, your Polly Ingalls, Flora Devonshire, they all score rapidly. They all hit to slightly unique areas, slightly different areas. So when I actually start looking at what an 11 looks like, you go, yeah, there's a couple of players in there who could be your bat throughs and bat for a long period of time. But there's also players that can just take the game on. And so I actually think they're in a really good place. It's just going to be whether that freedom, that confidence, that belief from the T20 format crosses over into one-day cricket. And if they can just do those skills that they've been doing there for just a little bit longer, it puts them in the ballpark of scoring 300 most times when they go out. And if you're doing that, especially in a World Cup, you're winning more games than you're losing for sure.
And you spoke about all those names over there, especially in the middle to lower middle order. So what kind of an 11 are you sort of envisioning for New Zealand come their first game versus England?
Yeah, I think if they turn up in the better friendly conditions, which is probably what we're expecting, right? Most of the time we're going to see some pretty flat wickets, some wickets that are going to make some bowlers work really hard to have a good day out. I think there's still going to be the odd day that there will be some assistance for the quicks sometimes. I think there's always the chance as well that your spinners are going to come into it, especially perhaps as you progress in the tournament, and it might be the second or third game getting played on certain pitches. But if you're turning up to a fresh one, I mean, I think most batters should be pretty ecstatic about it, to be really honest. But I think your opening pair looks pretty solidified for mine. I think that you're looking at Suzie Bates, Georgia Plummer. The only one maybe that becomes a bolter there is a Bella James, if they want to use her completely as just a hitter, and then everyone, probably slides down a position. But I can't really see it happening. I think that the top two looks pretty set. I think you're then going to see Mealy Kerr come in at number 3. She's going to be your technician. I think you'll see Sophie Devine at number 4. I think she looks pretty comfortable there. Maddie Green, Brooke Halliday, and those 5-6 will be a little bit interchangeable, and they might use that a little bit for matchups, whether they want another right-hander or a left-hander coming in at certain points of the game. But I'd imagine they'll line up as numbers 5 and 6. Then it gets a little bit interesting. So Izzy Gaze is your number 1 keeper. She's taking the gloves first up. So you'd say she slots in at 7. But is there the space in there with both Sophie Devine and Mealy Kerr, if they're both expected to bowl 10 overs, is there the space that you can actually play another batter? You can actually slide in another batting option in that number 7 spot ahead of Izzy Gaze, which might become your Flora Devonshire. It might become your Bella James. With Flora, obviously, it gives you some left arm spin options as well, which can help you balance. If they don't go for that batter in there, they stay with Izzy Gaze at 7, then I'd imagine you'll see Jess Kerr as the number 8 option, giving you that slight all-round capability as well. Swings the ball. Perhaps, again, they could be interchangeable, Kerr and Flora Devonshire there, that if they need a spinner, Flora can slot in there. If they want pace, that'll be your Jess Kerr. Then I think it'll be Brie Illing will be one of your seamers. I think they're going to go with her, just with the ability to swing the ball up top. She's got a good bouncer. She's probably battling it out with your Leah Tahuhu and Rosemary Meir. I think there's only space for 2 of them to play. So I'd be saying that it's 2 of Illing, Tahuhu, Meir. That's going to be a little bit just form conditions, maybe a little bit of body management, injury management with the quicks as well as to backing up games and travel and all that goes around with it. Whether they just go with the experience of Leah Tahuhu that first game, she adds a little bit of hitting power as well, which they might like. So I would probably think that Leah Tahuhu lines up in your number 9 spot. I think Brie Illing probably lines up as your number 11, and Eden Carson's in there. She plays as your second spinner.
Those are some interesting points you mentioned there, Frankie, because even when I look at some of the names that have come in, like off the top of my head in the last ODI cycle, they've been a lot more of batters than, say, bowlers that have come into the system. Also down to the fact that there are enough bowling options already as part of the team, so probably they've not looked at it. But in general, when you look at New Zealand's bowling attack, which arguably is the weaker suit between the two, between batting and bowling. And when you see the performances in the last ODI cycle, especially the 2 data points I would want to bring up. One is in terms of wicket takers and the number of bowlers who've taken in excess of 30 wickets. Unfortunately, New Zealand is one of 2 sides, Sri Lanka being the other, where they've had no bowlers taking more than 30 wickets in the last ODI cycle. You've had multiple different bowlers and different options chipping in, but not one sort of spearhead in terms of wicket-taking abilities. Of course, you've got experience in Amelia Kerr and Leah Tahuhu, but when you look at that one leader who is going to get you wickets every time you want one, it probably seems to be a bit of a missing link there.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting stat that you've shown there around the wicket taking, and possibly you look at it as actually a real strength that you say you've got a balanced bowling attack, you've got multiple people who can take wickets for you, who can do a job. The probably concern you have with that on the flip side is that when the game gets tough, when the game is really on the line, you need a wicket, you need to break a partnership. Maybe you don't have that same feel of an out and out option that it's like, well, obviously this is the person who you just have to give the ball to. That's our wicket taker. So that's probably the little concern. I think maybe what's played into it is there has been a little bit of injury worries around, especially with the seamers. So there have been times that Sophie Devine hasn't been bowling a lot because of injury and having to manage workloads. There's been times that Leah Tahuhu's been injured. She's been out. Molly Penfold played a bit of cricket, missed a bit of cricket with injury. Hannah Rowe the same. Rosemary Meir the same. The workload management involved with Jess Kerr, who's been playing a lot of cricket. Eden Carsons, your Fran Jonas. There's just been a lot of moving pieces in there, and then you add in the fact that you've got some all rounders. I mean, Flora Devonshire played. She hasn't played one-day cricket yet, but in that T20 side played a little bit. You've got your Maddie Green, who every now and again has a little bowl. Brooke Halliday bowls some part-time overs. She's an absolute golden arm, by the way. If you need a wicket, you just give the ball to Brooke. That's the way to go. Bowls almost off the wrong foot. I think she says she doesn't know where it's going half the time, but she's just got that magic ability. She's a golden arm. And then Susie Bates. I mean, she chips in with wickets here and there. You wouldn't say you're going to get 10 overs out of her every game, but she's got that ability to contribute. So yeah, it's maybe a little concerning that there's not someone, the out-and-out person who you just give the ball to and know you're going to get a wicket. You're going to be able to change the game. But I mean, Melly Kerr's probably as close to that as you're getting, and the form that Jess Kerr's had with the ball recently, you start looking at actually, if you can get the right people firing at the right time, that bowling lineup looks just fine. There's enough firepower there. There's enough skill there, enough wicket taking there that in tournament cricket, then they'll be good as gold.
But Frankie, again, just over to you about your players to watch out for come this World Cup. Again, from a New Zealand perspective, are there any players you're especially excited to see?
I think I'm really excited. I mean, I probably have to say it as an off spinner myself, but I'm really excited to see how Eden Carson goes. I think she's a really important player in this lineup. She's your definite second spinner. I think she should be locked in to play basically every game as long as she stays fit and available for selection. And she's someone who's had a lot of success in the T20 format. That's where she bowls that quicker pace. She bowls into the surface. She hasn't quite as of yet had the same success in one-day cricket. Her numbers look pretty vastly different at this stage. So I just think she's coming up to that point in her career where she's played a little bit more one-day cricket. She's been able to take on different roles in her domestic team. She's expected to bowl the tough overs a lot, and I think that will then translate nicely into the one-day game. And it's just allowing her to settle in and to bowl with that same confidence she does in T20 cricket. She's a super competitor too. Like, she is a real gets in the fight and bowls beautifully to left-handers. So she's probably one of my players to watch. I of course have to pick, they call themselves the grandmas, the old girls, your Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, Leah Tahuhu combination. You've got to look at that experience come World Cups. And they are phenomenal cricketers. They bring so much to this team. So I guess those are my kind of ones that you just immediately have to watch. And then probably my other couple is probably Melly Kerr. She's just a superstar. It gives me the vibe that she could be player of the tournament if she has a good one. She's had a little bit of a leaner run of form. Didn't play as well as she would have liked through her overseas stints, but she is someone who she is just the consummate professional. She is everything you want in a cricketer, everything you want in a teammate. So if she starts the tournament off well with the bat, especially if she gets in the runs, that just flows into the bowling. And I think if she's able to stamp her mark early on, she's someone who will hold form through the whole tournament and could be one of those people that, because she's so talented, you get to the end of a tournament and she's actually going to be in your top 5 run scorers and your top 5 wicket takers. So you've always got to watch her. And then my last one, I'm again going to pick like a trio of players, and I'm going to pick the Maddie Green, Brooke Halliday, Izzy Gaze middle lower order finishes as a combo. If those three play well, and I think in recent times Maddie Green has been exceptional. She has just been the most consistent player in that lineup, has churned out runs, has got them out of some tough positions. Brooke Halliday, again, was outstanding in the little 3-game series that they played in India, straight on the back of that T20 World Cup. So she's had that experience. And Izzy Gaze is my little bit of a bolter. She just hits in slightly different areas, like most wicketkeepers do. And I think if those three fire, then it just means this New Zealand team's really hard to beat. So I've probably now picked half a team. Just watch everyone. If you want to watch the White Ferns, just watch everyone. They're all fantastic.
In all fairness, this looks like the quintessential Kiwi side. A side that probably at the face of it seems like, okay, you know what, the names, they probably haven't played enough games. You know what, this might be a side that we can, take on fairly easily. And come the World Cup, come the big games, they just know how to perform to their potential. So again, count them out at your own peril. That's the warning I would give to each of the other sides. And this setup is definitely one that I'm really looking forward to. One last bit of formality, Frankie. Time for some predictions. We've got 4 for you. Yeah, one is the highest wicket taker and the highest run scorer for the Kiwis, of course. And then your top 4. And who do you think would be the eventual winner of the Women's ODI World Cup 2025?
Oh, okay. So, well, I went half in on my prediction, didn't I? I said Melly Kerr could end up topping both. That does feel very greedy to give her both of them. So maybe I'll go with her leading the way as the bowling. Maybe I'll give her the bowling one, and then runs. Oh, I'd love it for Susie Bates, for it to be her. I would love her to be the Kiwis' leading run scorer, because I just think she's such a leader of the group. But I'm going to go a little bit of a bolter, and I'm going to go Maddie Green. I'm going to go that she's going to be the key in the middle order. The top 4, yikes. Okay, well, everyone plays everyone, so that's nice. I don't have to work out the crossovers and who's going to meet who at what points. I am going to say, well, New Zealand. I have to put New Zealand in there. That would be silly to not. I think you have to go. I think you have to go India as the home side. I think they've just got match winners throughout. You'd be foolish to not put Australia in there, right? They've been the best team in the world for so long, but I do see a little couple of weaknesses in there, so I'm not 100% sure on that. I am going to go with South Africa. They are always there or thereabouts. Laura Vulvart, I mean, Marizanne Kapp she is just phenomenal. So if there are other players around those two fire, then they'll always be there or thereabouts for semi-finals time. And you're going to ask me an eventual winner. I am a Kiwi. I put my Kiwi hat on. There is absolutely 100% I am biased in this, but I couldn't live with myself if I picked a winner other than New Zealand and then they end up winning the trophy. So you got to have faith. You got to have the belief that they can go and do it. So I'm putting my White Ferns hat firmly on and saying they will be lifting the trophy at the end of it and bringing it home to New Zealand.
Yeah, and on that extremely hopeful note, I think it is time for us to wrap up this preview. Thank you so much for being a part of it, Frankie. We had a great time talking to you about all things the White Ferns, and fingers crossed, like you're hoping, the White Ferns do make you proud and bring home the trophy. All right, and the next team, which is number 6, is none other than Bangladesh, a side that unfortunately hasn't played a lot of cricket in the recent past and will be heading into the World Cup with a few warm-up games and, of course, some training camps that have been happening back home. And hopefully that alone is something they'll have to make do with. And we've got none other than Mohammad Assam joining us over here. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on board. How is everything back home in Dhaka?
Yeah, it's a very rainy period in Bangladesh. The monsoon has been quite long this year, so there's been a lot of cricket in the indoor facilities across the country. So that's been a huge challenge for what we are going to talk about today.
I feel rain will be a running theme, so to say, in all of South Asia, because even in India, unfortunately, we've been seeing a lot of rains. Hopefully, it won't affect the World Cup games and whatever we're going to see in the next month or so. But anyways, straight up, cutting to the chase, we'll first have the fact file, of course. Like we mentioned earlier, their last game was versus Pakistan, which was a World Cup qualifier that happened in Lahore on the 19th of April and haven't played since then. The performance in the ODI cycle, not so great, so to say. Of the 28 games they've played, they have won 10 games. That roughly translates to about 35 to 40%, games won by them. Of course, in terms of recent form, they haven't done too badly. Barring the loss in the final and also the loss against West Indies, they've done pretty well in the qualifier as well, against sides like Ireland and Scotland, who really punched above their weight. When it comes to their highest run scorer, that's a bit of a surprise because their most popular name has to be the skipper, which is Nagar Sultana Jyoti. But it is Farjana Haq, who's actually done pretty well for them, scoring nearly 1,000 runs, 867 to be precise, at an average of 33 and a strike rate of 53. And when it comes to the highest wicket taker as well, it is Nahida Akhtar, who's done fantastically well for them. An economy of 4, that's something that everyone should keep in mind, along with the wickets and, of course, a balls per dismissal of 36. Now, quickly coming back, when we talk about Bangladesh, not just the surfaces, but even the team, one thing that comes to mind to everyone is the lower strike rates, the slow gameplay and everything. Do you think that will potentially play a big role, ahead of the World Cup?
Yeah, going into the World Cup, of course, strike rate has always been a concern for the Bangladesh team over the last, you know, as long as they have played at this level. I mean, they have shown a lot of development in terms of, you know, skill gathering, in terms of acquiring new skills, but in terms of strength or in terms of looking for players, even at the scouting level, even in terms of looking for players who are potentially big or potentially with a bit of power, natural power, they've always really not, they've always fallen short of that. So you wouldn't see a lot of Bangladesh cricketers who are tall, you know, who are heavily built or have that sort of. I'm just going from the basics, so it's that's one area that is lacking. And then when it comes to you know, finding the technique to hit big or raising their strike rate, they've always been a very steady team who's happy to score or just bat out the 50 overs or bat out the 20 overs whenever they've played any format. So that has always been a huge shortcoming for the Bangladesh team. And I feel that it's a general problem in Bangladesh cricket, not just the women's team. It's been the problem with the men's T20 team. We always talk about it, that power isn't there. They're not willing to hit sixes. I think over the last few years, at least for the last 2 years, and from the last time India toured Bangladesh, there has been this constant talk of how they can be more powerful, or you know, become a big hitting team, or if not that, at least become a more skilled team in terms of the nuances of batting, getting more singles, being more, you know, frenetic at the crease. That hasn't really come to the fore, and it's also to do with I think a lot of lack of cricket. There is a serious lack of, you know, domestic cricket. It's not scheduled properly on all occasions. So it's a combination of a lot of things. But I think it's a good thing that they've developed a lot of skills, but there's also a huge room for improvement.
Very valid points. Those, in fact, numbers also sort of, back you over there in terms of this graphic over here. When we look at something like the non-boundary strike rate and, of course, their boundary percentage, to put it very simply, like Sam mentioned, it's not just the fact that they aren't striking boundaries. It's also down to them playing few too many dot deliveries over there. Hardly any runs being scored, which is why, unfortunately, they find themselves in the lower end of that quadrant, and that's not the quadrant you would want to be a part of, especially when you see how some of the better teams are doing. And Bangladesh definitely knows that the task is cut out for them in terms of what their batters especially will have to do. But another thing to, of course, be happy about, like you mentioned, Assam, a couple of names come to mind. There is Sharmin Akhtar Shukla, who's done really well in the last year or so. Even in the T20 World Cup, you saw names like Shati Rani being added to the squad. So clearly there is that initiative being taken by the think tank as well. They understand that this is a problem and they will have to course correct. So hopefully, in the near future, if not this very World Cup, we will get to see something change on that front. When you look at, what the FTP has in store for them in the next cycle, India, of course, will be touring them after the World Cup. Then you've got Sri Lanka coming. You've also got Australia and New Zealand potentially traveling to Bangladesh in the next 12 to 15 months. We saw Australia also tour Bangladesh last year, which sort of nicely segues into what I wanted to ask next, Isam. We spoke about the players themselves probably, having or lacking in a bit of that attacking intent. A lot of it is also down to the kind of surfaces that are available in Bangladesh, right? Because we know that the surfaces haven't traditionally been conducive to stroke play, which has meant that batters have found it difficult, bowlers have found it a lot more easier. And which is why I wonder, like when I look at, things like economy rate for some of their bowlers, do you think it probably flatters to deceive in terms of, okay, the conditions there are going to be markedly different from, what we might be seeing, say, in Mumbai or something like that, during the World Cup?
Yeah, the two sides of it. Good question, actually. I think the bowlers are very accurate. Nahida and Rabia, they're very accurate bowlers. Even Marufa is a very accurate bowler. And of course, when they play a lot of cricket on these surfaces, the bowlers tend to get the advantage. I mean, it's a black soil pitch, which it has been part of the debate for the last 10 years in Bangladesh cricket. And uh, rather than giving the women's cricket team better pitches to bat on, the BCB has doubled down on it. When India came last time, or when Australia came last year, I mean, the pitches have been even worse than what the Bangladesh men's team get in Mirpur. And they make sure that they play in Mirpur. Whenever we ask them, why don't you get them to play in Sylhet? Because Sylhet has the best batting wicket. Why don't you go and play in Chittagong, where batting is easier, better? The excuse is usually, Australia is here. We want them to play in Mirpur because it's in Dhaka. Mirpur is a suburb in Dhaka, sort of like a suburb in Dhaka. So they want them to stay in Dhaka, although all these other places have great hotels. So that's an excuse. Um, so what was the second part of your question?
So in terms of, there being a lot of flat surfaces or flatter surfaces, how do you think it is going to pan out for, a lot of the Bangladeshi cricketers over here?
You know what? One funny thing is, you sometimes, I mean, that it's a given that a batter who bats too many times at a bowling wicket, they'll be so happy to get a batting wicket. Bangladesh's batters, men's and women's, and I end up hanging out a lot with the men's team players, and I've spoken to them about it a lot. I mean, they get into a sort of like a, I wouldn't call it a depression, but they get very upset that they don't get to bat in good wickets. When they go to an ICC tournament, that's when you get good wickets. They don't know how to bat there. So it's very interesting. You learn how to bat on dodgy wickets or raging turners, but then you have to teach yourself how to bat on a good wicket. The same goes for bowlers, and I think it's more applicable to bowlers that they bowl better on helpful wickets. And when you give them a flat deck, maybe somewhere in India or in Sri Lanka over the next 1 month, they'll get a lot of flat decks. They will be struggling. And then it's a mental thing. I mean, you give away runs at 2 or 3 runs per over where you play the most, and then you end up giving like 5 or 6 an over. You do get that a shock to your system that I'm not that type of a bowler. Am I that bad? But actually, maybe that's the sort of run rate, the average or median run rate in these surfaces, right? 4, 4.5, 5, maybe. So when you go for 5 and over, it affects your mentality, and that's the same. I think it's the same mentality for playing in Bangladesh for men and women. The bowlers do get a lot of response from the wickets, the ball grips, turns, and it's very disappointing. It's a very disappointing mentality that the BCB have. And look, now that they don't have any cricket, now that they don't get an international team, because there's no prestige involved in losing, they have sent them to Sylhet where they have the best batting wickets, all the training facilities there, or the center wickets in Sylhet, the two grounds that they have back to back. Both have great batting surfaces, and that's where the women's team are training, because that's what they're going to encounter in India and Sri Lanka. So it just defeats each purpose. How the BCB, I mean, as you said, Akshay, that this cricket board does a lot of good things, but then they do a lot of strange things that mitigates the two, and then you end up criticizing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've learned to channelize is we all contain multitudes. Sometimes everything is so counterintuitive. You just don't know what to like, especially because now everything seems to be looked at in binaries. It's either right or wrong, black or white. So, which is why it makes it even more confusing for us, right? Like, of course, you're doing all these good things, but wait, why are you doing that? It just doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But at the end of my cliches, another graphic that sort of points to why Bangladesh might find it difficult. Just look at the graphic over here. In terms of economy, Bangladesh's bowling lineup has the lowest economy of all sides, which is, of course, supposed to be good. But at the same time, they have the second worst strike rate of any bowlers or bowling attack in the last cycle. Going on to show that while the conditions might have been a lot more slower, spin friendly, and whatnot, they haven't been able to take the wickets at the rate that they would have liked to. And this is when the conditions were sort of helpful, quote unquote. And now, when the conditions are going to be a lot more flatter, a lot more probably even pace friendly, something which Bangladesh does not really boast of, it's going to be a very interesting tale in terms of how they fare over there, given the conditions. And very fashionable offers. Of course, we've spoken for 20 minutes without necessarily talking about the squad. So, of course, let's talk about that as well. Isam, we'd love to have you just walk us through the squad in terms of the names and what you see. What really stands out for you right now, given the names that have been picked?
Well, there are some really good experienced cricketers like the captain, Nigar Sultana. You have Farzana Haq, who's a very good opener. Sobhana Mustari. I'm just going through the names that are in your list right now. Sobhana is a very talented batter. Sharmin Akhtar Sukta, I mean, I would like to speak a little bit about her because she is a unique Bangladeshi cricketer in terms of making a comeback into the team. She's like the comeback kid because she was nowhere near the team for a long time. And then at her own accord, on her own money, she joined a very well-known cricket academy called Moscow Cricket Academy, where Mohammad Salahuddin is the head coach. Mohammad Salahuddin is Bangladesh's current assistant coach, and he is the most famous cricket coach in Bangladesh, the most celebrated cricket coach. He's won the BPL a number of times for Kumilla Victorians, and not just that, he's been hands-on in producing cricketers like Shakib. Tamim is someone who's always been mentored by him, a lot more cricketers, and he's helped bowlers come back from illegal actions and all sorts of things. He's a very good coach. So Sharbin Akhtar Sukta went to him a few years ago, And at that very ground, I used to play a few amateur matches. I play a bit of. I've played professional in my earlier life, but then nowadays I play a bit of amateur cricket. Whenever I've been to that ground, at least maybe 4 or 5 times in a season, I would see that Charmin was one of the first at the ground, running laps or doing her full training and conditioning, and then hitting the nets. And she really spent a lot of. And this place is a little out of the way in Dhaka in terms of where Charmin used to live, or where usually people live in Dhaka. So it's on the eastern northeastern part of Dhaka, where it's now developing into a sort of like a satellite city. So before that, I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago, or just after COVID, I think. It wasn't that great, but she would travel there every day, train there. And I'm talking about the weekends where she got a bit of work done in the nets and everything, and she had to fight for a place there in the nets also. But the point being, she really tried it on her own, and she actually is a trailblazer in terms of returning to the site. So then she showed the way, while the others, they all understood that this is what they need to do. They just cannot turn up at the Bangladesh team nets and then expect to do well. They started to work on their own, hired their own coaches and trainers, and then start to get better. If you see Charmin's batting before this training time that she took, it's very different from how she bats these days, the power or the understanding of batting. So that's why I marked her out separately when you're showing me the squad, that she's someone that I do rate quite highly. Coming back to the others, Rabia Khan, of course, the leg spinner, Ritumoni, Shorna Akhtar, Sumaya Akhtar, they will all get a bit of game time, but Fahima Khatun is one who should be, in the team. And then there's the other column where we will talk about Marufa Akhtar, the standout fast bowler. I call her a fast bowler because she asked me to that she wants to be called a fast bowler because she tries to bowl very fast. Nahida Akhtar is very, very experienced, probably the best bowler in this team, the left arm spinner. I think Rubia Haider and Sumaya Akhtar are going on a bit of an educational trip as well, how a World Cup dressing room works and sort of those aspects of the team. But they might, because it's a long World Cup, they might get a bit of game time as well. So not counting out anyone, it's the best, probably the best that they could have offered, excepting of course Janatul Firdaus, who, I'm sure she played in Australia, in Canberra. She came back to Bangladesh, tried her hand in the Bangladesh team, but then they haven't picked her. So she did leave quite upset at not being picked. But I think this is the best that the Bangladesh selectors could have picked from whatever pool of players that they had.
And Isam, once again, you mentioned Sharmin Akhtar Sultan. She's definitely been a standout for me as well. Whenever you look at either the T20 side or the one day side for that matter, she is the one name that really sort of shows a bit of that intent. While sure, the comparison might not be against the best, but even then, given how lacking they have been when it comes to intent, it's been a sort of breath of fresh air the way Sharmin has played. If I'm not wrong, she also has the highest strike rate for any Bangladeshi batter in the last cycle, minimum 150 runs. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Farzana Haq. She's got loads of experience. She's played time and time again for Bangladesh. But what sort of really surprises me is the way she's sort of gone after bowling in general, because this stat comes to mind. Now, when I look at this is of all batters, minimum 500 runs in the last ODI cycle. Unfortunately, Farzana Haq finds herself in the wrong end of the spectrum, and you see a clear gap between her and the rest of the competition in terms of strike rates. We're just strictly talking about that and how she has fared. Clearly, she's consuming a lot of deliveries. Clearly, she's got the technique to last there long enough to make an impact for her side. Unfortunately, it's sort of not translated to more runs. How important do you think this is going to be? Because tying back to the conversation we were having earlier, strike rates will matter, and we know how modern day cricket is being played. It's only going to get more quicker and fast paced. Do you think this once again will be a cause for concern? Because this is here we're talking about your arguably senior most batter. She's also going to be a part of your top three. If she's going at a strike rate of 53, by the way, no other batter has a strike rate below 60 in the last cycle. Cause for concern?
To answer your question, mate, I'm going to have to disappoint you. You really did ask a very good question, but unfortunately, what Farzana Haq brings to the table is exactly what Bangladesh team wants, what the management wants, what the coach wants. They want a batter to last long. They don't want her to get out. It's her brief, and she does have a lot of shots. And also because she plays in the sort of wicket that she does in Bangladesh often, it has molded her into this survivor kind of a batter, which is unfortunate for her level of skills. I mean, she scored hundreds, international hundreds, not just against like lower ranked teams. I'm saying she's a good batter. But if you show this graph to the Bangladesh selector or the coach, they'll be very proud of her. You've played a number of balls. I mean, that's the mentality I'm trying to tell you guys, that this is the mentality that Bangladesh team has, and that's what they're going to take to the World Cup. Maybe on better batting wickets, she will be able to play a few more shots, but she is the anchor, so she will be expected to bat this way with the likes of Nigar and Sobhana to bat around her.
And Isam, to just get your thoughts even on Nigar Sultana Jyoti, right? Being the sort of captain she is, she will be leading Bangladesh, in her second World Cup. I mean, the last World Cup was special for its own reasons, that win versus Pakistan and all of that. But again, what do you think, she sort of brings to the table and just a voice for that team?
I think I wrote in one piece somewhere that she's one of the better captains in Bangladesh cricket, regardless of her whether she's from the men's team or the women's team. She, over the last couple of years, it's been a difficult time for the Bangladesh team with a lot of these incidents happening. I mean, you guys would definitely remember what happened with the India series at the presentation ceremony or whatever happened. She showed a lot of, I think, practicality. I mean, grace is a very often used word, which I don't want to use here because um, whatever happened wasn't that graceful, but she handled it very practically. She did give the Indian captain a bit of a reply in that sense in front of her. But when she came to the press conference, I very clearly remember she wasn't mean. She wasn't trying to be mean. She understood that this could be a diplomatic incident. It could blow up if she now reacts. And on a lot of occasions, I've seen her, from the only way I can, communicate with her was through, press conferences or interviews. She comes across a very, a level-headed person who knows the responsibilities on her. I think she wears that crown very well. Previous Bangladesh captains, I mean, they were sometimes overawed by what was happening or didn't really understand what representing or leading your country could be because the results weren't great. With a good bowling attack and some batters with her, I think now Nigar, with her experience also, behind the wicket, and she also understands the game very well. That's what many coaches have told me, that she's a good reader of the game. She has turned into a natural leader and someone who can score runs, someone who can lead the team, and the stuff that she tells the players from behind the wicket. It's funny, it's good, it catches the attention of a lot of fans, and I think she knows that. I think she puts up a bit of a theater as well. When she does a press conference with us, with the media, she does have those one-liners or some, self-deprecating jokes, which previous we could never expect from any, even men's team. I mean, they are so uptight. They don't want to make any wrong steps. They're so scared of making that, one soundbite. But with Nigar, I've seen that she's not only very frank when she's talking to her teammates, and it's not abusing the teammates or making fun of them. The message that she sends to the players, it's very crisp. She's asking you to do something, you have to do it. Not only does she read the game well, she does deal with her teammates quite, with a bit of empathy. She doesn't scold anyone in that way, and when she does, she also has that, oh, I'm not scolding you, but you should listen to what I have to say. She does say those things. So you need a captain who cares, and then again not cares too much. I think she's got that. And the best part, Neha, the thing about her is she scores runs. That's very important for a captain, to keep that level of respect in the dressing room. I think that's important for her.
All right, we've discussed a bunch of things. Just the last couple of questions, Assam.
Yeah.
Predictions and some names and all of it, something that's a lot more light-hearted. First up, of course, three names that you're looking forward to, when it comes to the World Cup, and of course the Bangladesh team in particular. We spoke about, the feisty Fahima Khatun. There's also the useful medium pace of, Ritu Moni. You've got Rabia Khan. You've got the experience of Nigar Sultana Jyoti. There's Farzana Haq. A lot of names, to be honest. Once again, Bangladesh is one of those teams that genuinely goes under the radar.
Yeah, three names. Obviously, the captain comes to mind, Nigar Sultana, Nahid Akhtar. I'm a big fan of left-arm spin because I was a left-arm spinner when I played. And Nahida is a very good bowler. I think she's quite high up in the ICC rankings as well. and Maruf Akhtar, because I have a bit of a personal connection with her. I just like to share that one little story that when the pandemic broke worldwide, 2020, I wanted to do a story about how the female players have been coping with the financial struggle. So I looked for players, and not the, I mean, some unheralded players from the under 19 squad. I think they were having a under 19 World Cups training before that, and I got a lot of phone numbers from one of the managers that you can try them. But the manager, I think, mentioned to me that there's this one girl from the north of the country who's really struggling, and that was Marufa is the one who was, her photo became viral when she was working in the rice field or paddy field with her father is a farmer, and how she owned up to it. I mean, I used to speak to her on the phone sometimes, trying to encourage her that it's gonna be okay. You're gonna come back to Dhaka. You can play cricket at some point. They're very disappointed at that time, and they were very much unsure of their future. I mean, greats of the game became unsure of the future. So you're talking about an uncapped Bangladeshi bowler. When few years later she made her Bangladesh debut, it filled me with pride. And then I got in touch with her. I said, I'm really proud of you. And she instantly recognized. She said, yeah, I remember we used to sometimes talk. And and by my great fortune was to give her the ESPN Cricket Awards for the best spell in a women's ODI or T20, and I could hand over the prize to her, and she was very sweet about it. And that was one of the proudest moments I had in my career, that I could give her that beautiful trophy. And she asked me, "Is it for me? Can I keep it?" I said, "Yeah, yeah. Not just taking a photo. It's yours. It's all yours." And I wrapped it, I packed it again for her. The take it home, keep it safe, give it to your parents. So that really touched me, and the fact that she's such a good bowler. I mean, that's the bottom line. She's a really good bowler. Plenty of coaches have taken a look at her, and she's one for the future. I think she's the one I'm most looking forward to among these three.
Last bit, Assam, just predictions time. We've got four questions for you. One is, of course, related to Bangladesh, which is their highest wicket taker, highest run scorer, and a couple more about the World Cup in general. Who do you think would be finishing in the top four? And who do you think would be the eventual winner?
I think Nigar Sultana will be the highest scorer, and Nahid Akhtar will be the highest wicket taker. Top four, I think India, Australia. I would pick India, Australia, England, and New Zealand. And eventual winner, I know a lot of people will say Australia and whatnot, but I think India will win the World Cup.
All right,
No, I
Assam,
mean,
good on you going for India.
Yeah.
No, appreciate that, of course.
Yeah.
They definitely have been in great recent form. We will
Yeah.
save our predictions for later. Unfortunately, we'll be talking to all of you guys. So clearly, we are also, a bit clouded in terms of our judgment. So we'll save it for the end. But thank you so much, Assam, for being a part of this. We had great fun. Importantly, we learned a lot, in terms of how Bangladesh cricket is doing and what to expect. Hope you also enjoyed the chat just as much as us. Any final words before we part?
Yeah, I was thinking of this, and I think it should be part of the podcast. Look, Bangladesh's women's sports is going through a really good time. The women's football team has recently made it to the Women's Asian Cup in Australia next year. It is a huge deal here because their rankings in world football or in Asian football isn't great. So that doesn't mean that if the World Cup, if the cricket team doesn't do well, me or anyone that I know, we will make fun of them or will not take them seriously. We understand that they have gone through a qualification process. It wasn't easy. They've made it this far, and they are not really on the same, I think, level with the other teams because of the preparation time. So, from myself at least, I think that women's cricket or women's football or women's sport in general should go even better in Bangladesh. I mean, the football team has shown amazing stuff. I mean, at every level. That could be a separate podcast. There's amazing stories there. But I think the women's team should feel encouraged by them, inspired by them, but not feel any pressure that we want them to go and win the World Cup. I think I will be very realistic in my expectation that if they do well, if they play good cricket, if they show great, at least if they show great intention, that'll be perfect.
Let's move slightly westwards to, of course, the host of the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup. It's none other than Team India, the team that a lot of people are looking forward to, not just fans, neutrals as well, because this is a side that's definitely been on the rise in the last few years. And we saw the recently concluded India-Australia series and the way, they put on a fight. I think there's more than one reason to be happy about how this side is shaping up. We've got none other than Ananya Upendran joining us, and it's going to be a fantastic conversation. Hello, Ananya. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Perfect. All right, let's cut to the chase. Neha, let's start off with the fact file. You can just walk us through how India has fared in the last ODI cycle.
Yeah, I think just looking at India's performance, right, in the past ODI cycle, it's been quite commendable. Of course, the last match was versus Australia, the final ODI that happened in Delhi, which was a run fest again and just had so much to offer. Again, when you look at the performances in the last cycle, India's played a total of like 37 matches, having won 25, lost 11. And the recent form might suggest, a loss, but then there have been some imperative wins that have come in. The highest run scorer, of course, being Smriti Mandana, being in probably the most prolific form of her life, scoring 1,975 runs at an average of 56. And just looking at the wicket takers too, no surprises there with Deepti Sharma, being amongst the wickets with 57. So Ananya, just to probably kickstart our discussion too, like how have you assessed India's performances in the last ODI cycle? Starting right from 2022, where it was a very heartbreaking World Cup, so to say, to come all the way and just put in such commendable performances in a lot of bilateral series.
Yeah, I think they've kind of rebuilt quite well. I mean, if you look at that 2022 squad, you had two stalwarts who walked away. After that, you lost Mithali Raj and Jhulan Goswami, and that was your run bank and essentially a wicket bank. So I think they've done really well to rebuild since then. Of course, the core of the squad, largely with Harman, with Smriti, with Deepti, has remained the same. Renuka as well has kind of, taken to that premier pacer role. So I think the squad itself has looked good. I think they've kind of gelled well together. They've almost grown up together in some sense, matured at international level together. So I think they look very, very strong. But I think with India, there are always 100,000 questions around every time they go into a World Cup. It feels like there are always a couple of unanswered questions and they're going there, still trying to figure a couple of things out. But having said that, I just feel like this is, and I think Harman said it as well, this is probably the most settled Indian squad. I think Alyssa Healy has said it as well, that this is the most settled Indian squad, that there haven't been too many question marks, or there haven't been too many surprises, which I think is a great way to start.
I mean, I feel when we sort of look at the process or the evolution of the squad, across the last ODI cycle, it sort of reminds me of, how I used to come up with answers during my engineering days. The steps might be all over the place. You just don't know where is the final answer, but somehow you arrive at that final answer and you're like, okay, wait, I've not done that bad a job over there. And that's how it's been, right? Because I remember for the longest time, at least up until about 12 to 15 months ago even, we were like, oh my goodness, like who is going to be a part of the World Cup? We've tried so many names. In fact, just to give you some more context, India have used the most number of players in the ODI cycle, which sort of shows, how much chopping and changing happened, of course. But credit where it's due. In the last couple of months, you clearly saw the structure sort of form. You saw what they were actually looking at. And now, like you said, of course, it looks far more settled. But 37 players used, Ananya. That's twice more than what Australia have used. Of course, Australia is a different kettle of fish. We saw Yasika Bhatia being unfortunately injured, so it meant that they had to sign a replacement. How much on board were you with the idea of them bringing in a backup keeper? Because again, the reason I asked this question is one school of thought that at least I subscribe to is that, see, Richa Ghosh is your number one keeper and she's not going to miss out any games unless there are injury concerns. So she's going to play those 8 games. And as things stand, Uma Chetri would not be able to make it to the side as just the batter. If Richa is playing, then Uma in all likelihood will only be someone who will be a part of the squad. That's where you think Tejal Hasabnis could probably have been given the nod over there, because Richa is going to play each of these 8 games. It's probably not as taxing a tournament as, say, even a WPL. It's spread over a longer period. Do you think there was any merit in, probably Team India looking at Richa Ghosh being the only keeper in the squad?
Yeah, I think, especially considering it's a home World Cup, it wouldn't have been too hard to fly in a replacement as well, right? So I think I completely subscribe to your view. I feel like Tejal could have been drafted in as just batting cover. And it wouldn't have hurt too much. I feel like, with them going with Uma, it's almost like you're looking through the cupboard for something that's not there. We clearly don't have a wicketkeeper who can score runs. And funny thing, when Yastika went down, my first reaction was, your easiest option to bring into the squad now is actually Tanya Bhatia, because she bats at number 11. She's your best keeper. She's not going to lose you a game. Whereas any other keeper could potentially lose you a game.
But I think let's talk about the squad. We've spoken about a few names right now, but of course it is a 15-woman squad, so it's only fair that we talk about the other names as well. There we go. Ananya, talking about these names, looking at this, Jesus,
Yeah, I think it's like I've mentioned several times, it's quite a solid looking squad, the batting lineup. You've got Smriti and Pratika, that opening partnership that's kind of become the very solid, kind of stable force for India. And then Harleen, Harman, I think Amanjot is going to play a key role, and then Richa Ghosh and Deepti Sharma with the bat are going to kind of, I mean, that looks like a very, very solid group of batters. With the ball, Renuka, it's really nice to see her back. I think Kranti God is kind of the surprise package in the mix, and she's really taken the international cricket like a duck to water. And then the third seamer in Arundhati Reddy, I think she's kind of made her way there because they also want to, figure out Amanjot's load. I'm not sure whether she can go through the World Cup, bowling 10 overs, batting at number 5 or 6, whatever that is for India. And then the spin group, Sneh Rana, of course, the comeback queen, as she has dubbed herself, along with Sri Charani and Radha Yadav. Both of them, I think, play together for Delhi Capitals and are kind of a good foil for each other, and of course for Rana and Deepti as well. So Uma Chetri, of course, like we've mentioned, is probably going to be back up to Richa. Won't get a game unless something goes terribly wrong for India. So it's a very, very solid looking squad. Some new names, some really exciting names, but I think all in all, a group that we feel like we can really trust. Of course, I think I forgot to mention Jamima Rodriguez, but I think, yeah, she's going to play a massive role in the World Cup. But this is a group that I think everyone's kind of pinning their hopes on to make that final, to probably break the World Cup jinx, as they've called it. But yeah, I think this is a group that we can trust, and they've proven themselves that they're kind of ready to take on the game, to kind of push to the next level as well. And yeah, I think fingers crossed that nothing goes wrong, and if they play to their potential, I don't think there's any stopping them.
But I think another interesting talking point of the squad itself was the similar squad played in the Australia series. And the series did pose a lot of interesting questions too, right? I mean, we will discuss them one by one. But at last, like, what have your impressions just been of that Australia series and how the squad was sort of shaping up?
I mean, I think I was honestly very, very pleasantly surprised by the way that series went. If you look at the first match in isolation, it was almost like, oh my gosh, here we go again. We're no match to them. But I think the way the group kind of stepped up after that, especially led by Smriti, I think the way Smriti's kind of taken her game to the next level once Pratika's come in, she's found some solidity at the other end and therefore allowed herself to kind of play the role of the aggressor. It's a role that we haven't seen her play much because, Shafali used to do that for India, and Smriti then had to be kind of the stable, solid one for India. But I think the fact that Smriti is now leading the charge, she's showing the group, how to play the international way, how to play the Australia way almost. And she's doing it in her own way. It's not like she's playing these fancy shots and being, ridiculously aggressive. It's almost like it's just an extension of the Smriti Mandhana we know, and it doesn't look reckless by any stretch of the imagination. Almost, when Shafali plays the way she does, sometimes it's easy to call her reckless. But when in the Australia series, at no point do I think anyone was calling Smriti reckless. And yeah, I think just how she kind of led that batting group, and then how almost everyone followed, even to see Harleen in that last game come in and just take on the game, because that's kind of been one of my criticisms of her for a long time, that she takes way too long, and you can't have her and Pratika 3 and 4 batting at a low strike rate in the middle overs. So it was nice to see kind of everyone somewhat turn a leaf. Hopefully they're able to continue that in a high pressure tournament in the World Cup when, there are bigger crowds, there's more noise, people are going to be, everywhere they go, people are going to be asking about the trophy, people are going to be, wishing them, saying 100,000 things and giving them advice. Hopefully they're able to carry on. But I think what really impressed me about that Australia series was also just the fight they showed, even the bowling group. You look at that bowling lineup and it doesn't inspire a hell of a lot of confidence in terms of taking 10 wickets all the time, but somehow they find a way. And that's kind of very, it's almost like a characteristic of Deepti Sharma, Snehrani. You think of them and they're cricketers who just somehow find a way. And I think Arundhati Reddy has kind of nicely found her way there. Radha Yadav is also that Jugadu type cricketer who, somehow they get the job done. And this Indian team, at least that bowling unit is almost like that. Somehow they get the job done. They're not thumping their chests like a Pooja Vastrikar would, but somehow in their own little way, they just find a way to make it work. And hopefully they continue with that spirit, with that fight, and with that character in the World Cup as well.
And Ananya, sticking to the bowling unit itself, if we sort of look at how the squad is fared, on the one end of the spectrum, you've got someone like a Deepti Sharma, who is the highest wicket taker in the last ODI cycle. But then, when you sort of look at it, from an even more bigger picture point of view, India has the least number of bowlers who picked 20 or more wickets in the last cycle. Just shows that, unfortunately, because there were quite a few names used, quite a few names lost to injuries, it's meant that not enough of them have played consistently long enough to sort of have that experience or have that game time under their belt. How do you think that lack of experience could potentially play? Do you think that could sort of, be a bit of a concern for the Indian side heading into the World Cup?
That doesn't worry me that much. I mean, I think if you'd asked me this a World Cup ago, it probably would have worried me. But I think that the trend that we've seen, at least in the last couple of years with the selectors, is they're picking slightly older players. They're picking players who've been around the domestic system for a while. Therefore, these people know their games. They know what works for them. They're not figuring out their game at international level, which used to be the case with most Indian teams that were picked, right? Every time you picked a new bowler, she was 18, 19, maybe 21 at most, and she was figuring out her game at international level. Whereas here, even though you have younger players at international level, they've still been around the domestic system for at least 5, 6, 7 years. So it doesn't worry me as much. But I think what's going to be key for India is, one, how they use their bowlers, and then two, which of their fielders turn up on the day. I think that's been our biggest concern. Which India turns up? Is it the sloppy or is it the sensational? And then again, their plans. I think what we've seen in previous tournaments, or a lot through this cycle, is that they've been very reactive in terms of their plans. But I think against Australia, what they did well in patches was that they backed themselves when under pressure. So you could see that, like, for an example, Arundhati Reddy was going full or going leg cutter when she was under pressure, and that's her stock ball. That's what she does in domestic cricket. So she's going to do that. Radha Yadav was probably attacking the stumps, the leg a little more. Deepti Sharma, like, these people know what their backup option is. They know their plan B, C, and D. So it doesn't worry me as much. While on paper it doesn't inspire confidence, like I said, I still think that these cricketers know how to get the job done. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the bowling might be lacking a bit of experience, but I don't think the same can be said about the batting. Arguably, this has been the best batting lineup, and that's saying something, because you've got someone like in Australia who is breathing down your neck. But this number suggests that in terms of the number of batters who've scored more than 500 runs in the last ODI cycle, India have 7 of them, and that's the joint highest along with England. Just goes on to show that enough of them have chipped. Of course, people want to talk about Smriti Mandhana and her pilot techniques, but again, that does not mean that the others haven't performed. And that's where I think Team India has strived for a change. Now you see a lot more of them raising their hands up and actually winning games for their side. There's Jenny, there's Harman, there's Richa down the order. Pratika Rawal, she's already shown that she's got the game at this level. But that's where the big question is, Ananya. You spoke about the fielding as well. One great fielder India is missing right now, Amanjot Kaur, hopefully should be fit for the World Cup. But should she make her way back into the side, who will be the casualty firstly? And where do you see her slotting in? Like, people want her at number 3, people want her at number 6. How do you see her fitting into the scheme of things over here for the World Cup?
I mean, I think for me it's a straightforward flip, because Aman cannot bowl 10 overs. Like, I feel like if she were to bowl 10 overs, you're losing her towards the end of the World Cup, and I feel like she's going to be a key player in this World Cup with both bat and ball. So for me, the straightforward flip is Harleen misses out, Jemmy moves up to 3, If you want Deepthi at 5 and then Aman at 6 or whatever, however, but one of 5, 6, 7 is where Aman bats. And you have the cushion of having an extra bowler in there. I mean, that's kind of how I would do it. And then of course, if you look at the last 11 that India played, Jemmy wasn't part of that 11. So which of those bowlers misses out? It would probably be between Arundhati and Radha. One of them would miss out and Jemmy would come in. I think that's India's best 11 through the World Cup, and that's hopefully, if Aman's fit, that's the way they go. But I think they need to be very careful with the way they manage Aman and not load her with too much because and now I guess with Kranti there, and she is probably funnily enough, your main wicket taker almost. I mean, like, she has the ability to pick up wickets whenever she walks in. It's whether it's because she's a new, the new kid on the block and people don't know what to expect. But yeah, I think having her there, it almost gives, you already have the third seamer. Aman can be a third seamer. So that way I feel like, yeah, that 11 with Aman and Jemmy in and Harleen and either Radha and Arundhati out is likely the best 11.
Just to play devil's advocate over there, Ananya, I mean, there's also a fair argument to be made that Jemmy at number 5 has been a force to reckon with. She's been phenomenal over there. She's made that spot her own. Beat strike rate, beat average, beat consistency. She's really done it all. And importantly, she's played no more than 3 games at number 3 in the last 4 years. So it's not even like she's gotten enough game time over there. So once again, Amanjot at number 3, is that also possibility? Because like you mentioned, we cannot expect Amanjot to be a 10-over bowler for us. That's why maybe shouldering a bit more of batting responsibility and bringing in an additional bowler lower down the order could potentially help us cushion a bit of our batting while at the same time not losing on a lot of bowling. Do you think that is something we can consider, or it's probably too sort of left field?
Look, I'm sure people are considering it, but I feel like Aman's played that 5 role even for Punjab. She's a very, very good player of spin. She knows how to keep the game moving. So I wouldn't, I see her being able to play at the same tempo as Jemmy has found at number 5. So I would rather that Jemmy move up the order because it's, solid technique. She knows how to play quality pace and all that. And while she hasn't had the best track record up the order at international level, she's that quality. I wouldn't want to expose Aman up there because I feel like she's a much better player of spin than she is of pace, probably.
Yeah, Ananya, I mean, all fair points there. It will be interesting to see, come World Cup, what's the kind of combination that India wants to opt for. Probably another major, talking for the venues itself, right? I mean, India is playing a home World Cup, and most of the venues is going to be, I think, a first for the girls. I mean, domestically, yes, they have played, but internationally, it's going to be massive. So, how much of that home advantage do you think is going to kick in? Do you hope the fans are going to, throng the stadiums, come in massive numbers? And how will that whole home World Cup side of things, sort of play out for the Indian team?
I mean, first of all, I do hope they throng to the venues. It's taken them a very, very long time to announce tickets itself. First took a long time for the venues to come out and the tickets. So it's been quite underwhelming. It hasn't felt much like a World Cup at all, but yeah, hopefully people do come. And if you're watching this, listening to this, please do come. It's going to be an amazing tournament. Whether how the girls will take to the new venues, I'm not sure. A lot of them have played domestically in Guwahati. There have been a lot of tournaments in Guwahati in the last 2 or 3 years. Whether it's zonals, under 23s, seniors. Someone has played in Guwahati, so they know those conditions. I think Indore, Vizag are going to be quite interesting. They did have a training camp in Vizag. But I think Indore, not too many of them have played there. So whether it's actually an advantage, who knows? But I feel like if the wickets in Delhi and Chandigarh are anything to go by, Chandigarh wasn't as good as Delhi. But I mean, I feel like they're just going to serve up flat tracks, and hopefully it's going to be a run fest everywhere. This is not the bowler in me talking, by the way. But just for viewers, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. I think the crowds are what are going to make a big difference. Just people coming and watching, and how I think the younger group then take to the pressure of that. So they've all yeah, they've all played in the WPL. Apart from Pratika, they all have experiences of playing under lights, playing in front of people that are screaming their names or screaming, I don't know, RCD or something, which they also did in Delhi. But yeah, I hope I don't know how that's going to play out and how they're going to take to the venues. I think what's going to be very interesting is how they recover from the travel to each, because I'm not sure they're very well connected cities in the first place. So there's going to be a lot of tired bodies. But I think what's good is that India playing back to back Vizag and then go to Mumbai and play back to back there. So I think the back end of their fixtures look relatively easier on the body in that sense. But I think the front end is quite a lot of travel around the country. So yeah, I think more than the crowds and everything, I think how the players are going to adapt to the travel and then the media demands and all the rest of it is going to be quite interesting.
Also, Ananya, with the venues itself, like you mentioned, Indore, Guwahati, Vizag, all of them might not have hosted a lot of women's games, but if the men's games that have happened over there are anything to go by, they've all been run fests. Usually, be it the IPL, be it international cricket, we've always seen high scores. We saw the game in Delhi as well, 400 playing 350, 360. We don't see that often in women's cricket. Firstly, of course, that bodes well for our batting unit, which, like we were mentioning, even if you look at the last ODI cycle in terms of how they fared compared to some of the best sides, they are second only to Australia. Once again, going on to show in terms of run scoring ability, in terms of also saving or protecting their wickets, they've been great on both counts. That's good. But what then sort of the pessimist in me wants to think about is what about our bowlers then? We went with this four spinner strategy in England, and then we saw them revert to a three pacer strategy in the last two ODIs because the first ODI clearly sort of did not go as per plans. The World Cup's going to be filled with flat tracks. How then do you look at the bowling lineup? Like, do you think more pacers are needed? Do you think India will probably go back to that tried and tested method of four spinners and just sort of try and apply that spin choke on their oppositions?
I think with Kranti there and Kranti having really stepped up, I don't think they'll go back to the four spinner strategy, as in like one seamer and four spinners. I think there'll definitely be two seamers playing. But I think what worries me about this Indian team and about that bowling lineup in particular is that now outside of Kranti, you don't have an out and out wicket taker. Like everyone's naturally a defensive bowler. And which is why like a Shreyanka and Asha Doy, maybe even a Priya Mishra, and I know Priya blew hot and cold and all that, but a leggy would have, she would have been your middle overs and forcer, almost like your Alana King, right? When Australia need a wicket, they go to Alana King. Now when India need a wicket, they go to Kranti. But you don't have a spinner doing that. I know Deepthi is very, very consistent, but she is naturally a defensive bowler. But that's where, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like the plans are going to be very, very important because if you know you're getting served up flat decks and you know you're going to go for runs, how do you then protect and minimize? I think that's where the experience of these bowlers will come in handy. People who've played in the WPL, who are used to almost getting carted around, who understand what the fast-paced game looks like, and what their options are at the death. So an Arundhati, a Radha, a Rana, if I mean the thing with white ball cricket is dot balls are your currency. So while wickets are yes important, you can still win by restricting, right? And I think that's what India are banking on, where they have this unit that are good defensively, but that's where their plans have to be very, very airtight, and they have to field very well. I think that's it worries me, the bowling attack. Don't get me wrong, but I would still back them to defend on a good day in the field. That's kind of the asterisk.
We've probably reached that part in our conversation too, where we'll ask you for your players to watch out for, right? We've looked at the squad at large, areas that work and don't work, but any players that you're absolutely looking forward to seeing?
I've mentioned her several times because Team Pacer, Kranti God, definitely. I think Aman is another one, Amanjot God. I think very, very exciting. And she's kind of like the all-round package that India have been searching for a very long time. So how we manage her in the long run, I think is going to be key. I think she can fill in that number 5 slot and be the third seamer for a long time coming.
So she'd be the other one. But another person I'm very, very keen on seeing how she goes in this World Cup, considering it's her first World Cup and it's been a very long time, is Jemima Rodriguez. Everyone knows the story of 2022 and how she got cut and everything that happened after that. But I think the way she's reinvented herself in ODI cricket at international level has been sensational over the last couple of years. And whether she finds herself at that number 3 slot again, or she's owning that number 5 slot, I'm really keen to see how she goes, how she takes, how she soaks in the pressure of playing a World Cup, and now people just expect so much more. When she walked into the Indian team, we already expected her to be the wonder kid, but now it's a World Cup. There's so much more. I'm keen to see how she goes as well.
Of course, last but now, predictions time. Ananya, just 4 simple, light-hearted questions for you. One is highest run scorer, the other is highest wicket taker for Team India, of course. Top 4, and who do you think will be the eventual winners of the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup?
Okay, highest wicket taker I think is going to be Kranti, simply because new kid on the block. She is an attacking bowler. I'm going out on a limb saying that. Highest run getter, it would be hard to go past Smriti the way she's batting right now. So yeah, I'd go her. Top 4. Oh my gosh, this is going to be the hard one. I'd say Australia, India, because my heart's in them and because of the way they've been playing South Africa. The 4th is, I think it would be easy to say England, but considering the way they've been playing, I'm not sure. But between England and New Zealand, I think that's where I'm going to go. Yeah.
I mean, I would have expected, like you said, England would be a fairly easy answer to give. So it is interesting that, you are circumspect about them. I do have my own reservations about how they have been going about their business, but we'll save that for later. And of course, eventual winners, who do you think would it be? And why is it Team India?
Do I have to answer this? Can I not answer this? I mean, I was looking through some numbers, and Australia have won every World Cup in India, have they?
2013 and 1997, both, yeah. And,
yeah.
happened before, I'm trying to think.
I think 1978 also they only won, no?
I didn't know that was in India. Okay, all right. So that's 3 in India.
Yeah.
If it's any Solis, they lost the 2016 T20 World Cup in India.
I know. That's true. And they don't have Meg Lanning, so yeah. I'm not going to answer this. I'm just going to sit on the fence here.
So we respect the sanctity of the council. We get it.
Wait. I don't want to answer this one because I don't want to jinx anyone, and because I don't want the hate to come my way. So let's just say no one.
Right. All right. In the interest of us not wanting to jinx any other team, we'll probably end it on that note then. Thank you so much, Ananya, for being a part of this conversation. We've had great fun and importantly got to chat with you all things Indian cricket. Thank you so much once again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, like we said, the team that does not need to be jinxed manages to break all jinxes that have been plaguing them, the last decade or so. So fingers crossed on that. Thank you so much once again. All right, and that leaves us with just one team to preview, and it's none other than South Africa. The South Africans have been making all the right noises in the last couple of years. So yeah, here we are discussing them, and we've got none other than Dinisha Devnarayan joining us. There's lots to talk about, so fingers crossed it's going to be a great conversation.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon there in India. I'm really good, thanks. Yourself?
It's perfect. Everything's going well with us. We've been discussing about all the other teams, but South Africa is definitely a side. I have lots to talk about and a lot of thoughts, so happy to have you over here. So first up, of course, the fact fight in terms of what South Africa has done in the last ODI cycle. Their last game was, of course, the recently concluded bilateral series. The third ODI between South Africa and Pakistan was won by the hosts. That happened on the 22nd of September. When it comes to the ODI cycle itself, they did end up winning 17 of their 37 games that they played. So that's about half and half in all fairness. And that's not too bad at all, considering some of the big names missing out, and they have been through that transitional period, both on the field and also from a backroom staff POV. In terms of recent form, of course, they lost the recent ODI versus Pakistan, won the first couple to take home the series, and of course also won the last 2 ODIs versus West Indies that happened a couple of weeks ago. highest run scorer in the ODI cycle. No surprises, Laura Wolfhard there. Fantastic performance for the cycle. In fact, she's the highest, or rather the second highest run scorer in the ODI cycle, only behind Smriti Mandana. 36 runs at an average of 56 and a strike rate of 81. Speaks volumes of the kind of caliber we're talking about here. Highest wicket taker. Now, that was a bit of a surprise for me, at least. It is Nadine de Klerk and not Maizan Cup. Probably also down to Maizan missing a few games. So, but anyways, good to see that there are more players chipping in for South Africans. It is Nadine de Klerk there. 44 wickets at a strike rate of 29.9, economy of 5.3, and she's definitely going to be a very crucial part of that South African side if they want to make it through to the World Cup final as well. Now, back, of course, Dinesha, very excited. As neutrals, we are definitely very happy to see South Africans and the way they have performed. But all in all, what do you make of the side and the makeup, especially with what they've been through in the last 2-3 years? Happy with how the squad shaped up, how everything's going for them?
Yeah, I do. I do think it's quite an experienced squad, if I'm being honest. If we just followed the Pakistan series that we just completed, and if I look at Nadine de Klerk coming down at number 8 to 9, I mean, that speaks volume of the side. And the bench was quite strong. I think we had Tasman Brits there on the bench. We had Annery Dirksen and obviously our massive player, Marizan Kapp, as well. So I do think that the team has a lot of experience. We've always been a team, well, not in recent years, but prior to recent years, that it was a team that lacked, I would say, depth, especially in the batting department. And to be honest, I think, the success of the team in the T20 World Cup, so the T20 format, has obviously shaped a different brand of cricket that we want to play here in South Africa. And I think that's going to be a massive thing. And the all-rounders, I think, can be different match winners here. We're coming to this upcoming World Cup. And then I think our bowling has enough experience to get us through the pressure situations as well as close games for us.
But yeah, in terms of some of the names, what do you make of the squad? Could you just walk us through it?
Yeah, great. I think it's a great start that we have the captain up there at front. She's a massive player for us. Not just with the bat, but just obviously our ability to captain that squad in chasing big totals, or whether it's defending big totals. Tasman Brits is someone that's coming obviously on their own. I think her performances recently, and I'll say the last 12 months as well, has been, one of the growth spurts I've seen in a player's development, and I think she's going to be excellent. We've got two great wicket keepers, great with the bat as well, especially Krabo Meso. I think, as a youngster coming into the squad, I know she had an opportunity to open the Pakistan series. It didn't go as planned, but they did show some good signs there. And yeah, Luke Sanalo's really good with the gloves as well and can offer some batting depth below that. When we say Annika Bosch, we always think about that T20 final against Australia and how she took the game away from them. So she's definitely a dark horse in that team. Nadine de Klerk, great all-round. I really rate Nadine de Klerk. She just got that fight, that will. She never gives up. I think from the last run or the last wicket, and you need that in your squad, especially when it comes to World Cups. Annery Dirksen, I think ICC Emerging Cricketer of the Year. Great potential, match winner. I think there's so much more to come from her, and I hope that shines through this World Cup. But she's definitely a player to watch out for. And like I said, one of our old faithfuls, someone that's really strong in roots of South African cricket. I think just saying the name Marizan Kapp on its own, everyone will come up with their own adjectives for her. But wow, what a player! And I'm so glad to see that she's fit and she's in the squad. Sunay Lee's also someone that lots and lots of experience, I think, can play a big part in the middle overs. And I see now that she's bowling off spin, which could play a very crucial part in subcontinent conditions. Nondumiso Shengasa, really good bat, offers off spin as well. Can really work through that middle period with the ball as well as with the bat. I think she's someone that can find the boundary when she needs to, but when South Africa might be in a little bit of a pickle and we just need strike rotation, she's someone that fits that role. Chloe Tryon, lots of experience there as well. We know when we speak about Chloe Tryon, we think about power. We think about her finishing games. And yes, she does have that capabilities of doing that. But I think there's more to come with Chloe in terms of how to construct that innings and how to put the team in better positions. Ayabonga Kaka, definitely new ball opener with the ball. swings the ball really good into in swing. I think she's going to be crucial for South Africa when it comes to taking wickets early and upfront on subcontinent conditions. And I think if she can fire, she'll put South Africa in a good position. We look at Masabata Class also, been playing the game for quite some time. Lots of experience with her as well. I think Masabata Class will be crucial in the middle periods when if our spinners don't fire and we need some sort of change of pace, just someone that should just come in there, hold the game from one end, and she has the ability to take wickets, so she might actually play a very crucial part. Nonkululeko Mlaba, yeah, look, I think she was tied or second with Amelia Kerr in terms of the most wickets taken in the last T20 World Cup. Great left arm option. I think she's going to be massive in the spin department. She has to be the spin lead. She has to lead that attack. There might be an instance where she might open the bowling or they might use in the middle periods, but it depends on obviously the runs put on the board and obviously the conditions that they're playing in, I suppose, plays a massive part in that there. And then Tumi Sekukune, yeah, someone that just looks to hit the deck quite hard, looks to bowl wicket to wicket. I also think with a bowler like that, we can't take them for granted. They can be deadly if they get it right on the time. And I think just her change-ups and the way she can manipulate her pace, keep the stumps into play all the time, she can pose a threat to oppositions.
I mean, that's a great place to start. We already now have a decent understanding of each of the players. And when it comes to the Pacers, there's already Marizan Kaab, there's Ayabonga Khaka. These two will definitely be starting along with Nadine de Klerk and potentially even someone like a Dirksen if you want a fourth pace option. That's where then the question arises, Dinisha. Like you mentioned, someone like a Seshni Naidu with the kind of risk and value that she brings into the setup, maybe in place of one of Masabata Class or Tumi Sekukune, given that there were enough pace options already stocked and loaded for the setup. Do you think that was probably one name that could have been included instead of one of the pacers?
I think it just, with the leg spinner in general, they mystery. They bring something that you don't know if they're going to show up on the day. You don't know if the ball's going to turn a lot or what they do. Sometimes they even get it wrong. And with the ball that they get it wrong, they usually get wickets from it, whether it's the full toss or whether it's down the track and they think they can capitalize. So I do think that we're missing a trick there. But having said that, hopefully that the spin attack that we do have, I think what's going to be important is the playing 11. Is that how we're going to get that playing 11? Is that playing 11 going to consist of the extra spinner or the extra seamer? And I think based on prior knowledge to subcontinent, we know that they might, especially if games keep being played on the same wicket, it tends to get slow and takes a lot more turn. So hopefully we can do enough and we can maintain consistency under pressure. I think that's a big one for us. And that we can come through with the World Cup on our shores with that attack.
In fact, numbers also point to that, Dinesh. I know when we look at how South African bowlers have fared in the last ODI cycle, when you look at it, they haven't been too bad when it comes to taking wickets, but it's that run scoring or run defensive ability, so to say, when it comes to their bowling. That's where they've probably, not been at their best. In fact, they have been, at the wrong end of the spectrum, so to say. They have been the worst performing side when it comes to economy. And you rightfully mentioned about, how important it would be for the South African bowlers to take those early wickets with Ayabonga Khaka and Marizan Kaab. You know that they've got that excellent ability to get the ball in. Marizan Kaab, of course, can move it both ways. And that's where, once again, because with what we've seen so far in the India-Australia series, the conditions were fairly batter-friendly, and the surfaces in Mumbai, Vizag, Indore have historically been flatter. So there won't be a lot of assistance for the bowlers already. So that means you've got your task cut out for yourselves over there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, if you put it like that, then if we look at the recent ODI series that's been playing between India and Australia, South Africa and Pakistan, I mean, those are high totals, and like to fall back on that high economy rate, it also goes just a little bit beyond skill. I think we've got to start developing relationships in the team where we can really trust the fields that we bowl into, because that's a valid point. I think that obviously the boundary ball percentage is just extremely high. We would get to a position where there's 3 or 4 dots in an over. Do we have the ability to get out the over by just smart cricket and execute the ball you want to bowl? that becomes another topic. But I do think that in and over, or roughly in and over, there is a bad ball, and it is getting punished away, which also speaks about how beautifully this game has grown, because you could have gotten away with it before. So I do think, yes, it's a little bit of execution that we got to be better at, but I also think we just got to be smarter in terms of where actually you want this ball to go. And I mean, if it doesn't go, it's okay, but can we stick to a plan, and can we stick to fields, not just a field, to make sure that, yeah, we execute, but more likely than not, you want your ball to go there. And I think that should contribute significantly. So yeah, I think also on the World Cup is poised in such a way that, there's so many venue changes, and it's something we've got to talk about. That adaptability can't happen after 10 overs. The game can be done in 10 overs. I mean, that's how much the game is growing. Is that, how do we find what length that is? I mean, we will always have information to stats and past information, and but at the end of the day, can we adapt on the day to say, look, if I'm taking the ball in, this is where we need to go. Do we have the ability to say 5 in, 5 out, 5 to the left, 5 to the right, that sort of thing? And I think if we can be a little bit more smarter in that, I do believe that economy will come a little bit low. And there might be a situation where wickets are very hard to come by. Do we have the patience to say, hey, let's just hold on here, but let's just string 3 dots and let's just get out the over instead of searching for the wicket? And I think that's why it's just the South African style in us. We want to bowl teams out and not be in the field for 50 overs, that sort of stuff. And I think sometimes we just get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and we slightly overpitch or give a bit of width. And that hurts us economy-wise.
Yeah, I mean, all fair points there, Dinesh, about especially the bowling side of things. And fingers crossed, the bowling attack can put up a very commendable show. But probably one area of concern that South Africa will really not even fret over is the fact that their batting has been so formidable, right? Especially the likes of Tasman Brits and Laura Wolfart right at the top. I mean, since the last ODI cycle, right, they've scored like in excess of 1,500 runs in just 26 innings or so. So again, what do you make of this opening duo and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, they're massive. They're really, really massive in the totals, whether it's been chased or whether it's been settled. I think every single time that Brits and Wolfart gave us a solid start, we've got to competitive totals, right? It's unfortunate, but yes, we can only remember what happened recently. I mean, if you look at the third ODI against Pakistan, I know that Tasman took the bench, but as soon as that top order doesn't give us anything substantial, it's like we sort of like lose ourselves. It's like we're trying to keep the brand where we need to just be a little bit adaptable into say, how can we just absorb that pressure a little bit? How can we rotate strike, and how can I build the innings? So for me, in this World Cup, based on relevance right now, the duo of Tasman Brits and Laura Wolfart is extremely, extremely important for us to get this, totals that's going to obviously put us in commanding positions to win games. But if I look, I think the thing that it's not trying to make sense to me right now is probably if I look at that middle order. I mean, you look at Sunay Lees, Annika Bosch, Annari Dirks, and there's Marizan Cup in there, Nadine de Klerk, Chloe Tryon, and I'm thinking something's not adding up. I mean, this team should be posting 350 in any day. So I think that, and I'm hoping that after that third ODI against Pakistan, and obviously the transition into World Cup, is that we can spend some time having that conversations, because right now you can say top order or top 2 is really giving us a good platform, and then that sets the tone. But then what if that doesn't happen? What is our approach then? What is the way we're going to get to 280 or 300 on the board? And I hope that's the type of conversations we're having.
But now you've got someone like an Annika Bosch coming in, Dinesha, but unfortunately not with a lot of game time, barring the 30-day training camp that South Africa had last month. And then, of course, the last ODI, once again, not ideal practice, so to say, for her, coming fresh off an injury. Do you think that could be a bit of a concern in what is otherwise a fairly solid-looking batting lineup?
Yeah, that is a good question that you posed there, and I think it showed. I mean, I think she scored about 10 or 12 the third ODI, and it looked a bit like she wants to get on with things, but you could see it's someone that hasn't been playing a lot of cricket, and it's a tough. You can see that obviously what she's done in that semi-final, the T20 World Cup against Australia. You can see she has the ability to do that. I don't think we should just write her off just yet. I think she'll be a better suited 6, I feel, because that'll give her less time to sort of, obviously, hopefully things go well with the top 5. And we can get her in where there's 20 overs to go, 15 overs to go, where the game sort of tells her how to play, and that she doesn't have a lot of time, as she did in the third ODI, to sort of like construct an innings. And maybe she can build away and find form and game time going through the World Cup. I mean, our first fixture is against England, so we don't really have much time to really suss out things. We've got to be on the ball from game 1. But yeah, I think that middle order, I mean, that I'll give it top 7 for now. You're looking at a Tasman Brits, Laura Wolford. 3, I would go with Suneli's. I don't think she has given us what she's capable of, and I think her peaking time is getting close to the World Cup. We saw snippets of it in the series, but we know the experience she might have. Then I'm looking at a Marizan Cup at 4. I think she's going to be pivotal in a way, and it depends. It depends whether we chase in or set in, and I'll keep saying that because she plays a massive role with the ball, and you want it to last the World Cup. So she becomes something that you talk about scheduling, rotating, and how we use her. 5, I would like to see an Nandumisa Shangase. 6 for me would be between Anari Dirksen or Annika Bosch. At the moment, you would go Anari Dirksen. 7, you're looking at either Nadine. 7 and 8 is between Nadine de Klerk as well as Chloe Tryon. Also there, I think you can even split them. Maybe the 5 goes there, someone else at 7 and another one at 8. Just to know that we can use full utilization of them as cricketers. But as well as that full 50. And then you're looking at your wicket keeper and then our bowlers. But Nonkululeko Mlaba has to play every game.
Just one thing to add over here, sorry, before Neha gets in. That's an interesting 11 you mentioned. Of course, it's got someone like a Sinalu Jafta slotted in about number 9, which is fair because you've got considerably better batters, above in the top order. We saw South Africa experiment with Karabo Miso opening, and she's clearly shown that she has enough potential. We saw that in the Under-19 World Cup as well. Do you think then that is something that South Africa might consider? Because on the one hand, you've got the experienced Jafta, and who knows what it takes to take part in these events and sort of handle that pressure. But on the other hand, there's someone with potential, someone like a Karabo Miso. It could potentially be a situation of baptism by fire of sorts, World Cup, and then suddenly on the big stage you're being handed some game time. But do you think that's something they might consider?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. Coach Mandla has been someone that's trying to find an identity for their team, and sort of for players that played in a plain 11, but you couldn't really see what they did. So take like a Miso Shangase, for instance. She either played as a spinner, then she batted at 8. So then he gave her a role, he gave an opportunity, and that came through nicely. And if I look at Karabo Meso opening the bat, and that becomes an option. I think what he's done really well is that anything can also happen at a World Cup. I mean, if we're talking about Tasman Brits and Laura Wolford only, and touch wood, if something had to happen, what do you want to be prepared for it, or given someone the opportunity to do so, or just be standing with your hands in your pockets? So I do think that we might see a few surprises, just in terms of how they go about it, the scheduling of the opposition that they play and where they are on the table, I suppose plays a big role in that there. But I think all the shift and changing had to happen. It would have been nice if it happened just before Pakistan, so you play your playing 11 that but I know that the tri-series with Sri Lanka, India, there was a lot of shift changing. I mean, Nadine went up, Karabo Meso was, there was a lot of who is this player that's going to, perform for their country. And it also happened in the West Indies series. So I'm hoping with all that information that we had, the learnings, the conversations, I think there's a lot of nuggets and a lot of information that happens on the one-on-ones that we don't have access to. And as a coach, you've got a World Cup now, and you've got to put your best 11 and who have the characteristics to do that. I think that's a big part that we don't speak of often, but in South African cricket we speak of a lot. It's not so much about how you're going to do it, it's about who's it going to be. Do you have the capabilities, and that characteristics that we speak about is that we'll find a way That's the easy part, but you got to want to do it. You got to want to get in there. So that, that becomes a good talking point in terms of when we are adaptable in the batting lineup, as well as the playing 11, and that role clarity becomes very, very important for me. Is that who's striking for us, and if you do come, are you striking or are you containing? If you're going in, this is your role, clear. It's just when we get a little bit few mixed messages and maybe a slight wicket here or two creates a little bit of pressure on us, and unusual things happen. But I'm hoping with all the learnings that we've taken to get to this point, we can put a solid 11 on the park, and we can be a real contender at this World Cup.
Dinesha, we've spoken about the batting, and it is fair to say that batting is definitely going to be the strongest suit of the South African side in the World Cup in terms of how their batters have been in great recent form as well. Numbers also point at that when we look at how some of their batters have fared in the last ODI cycle. Just look at where South Africa is at. They've had the best balls per dismissal across all teams. That's going on to show that they've got the technique to last 50 overs, which in itself is a big plus. Now it's all about, like you said, converting those balls played into more runs scored. It's that strike rate. They're already in the right direction, already in the mid 80s now, sort of taking it up beyond 90. That's where the game is, and that's where how the game has also evolved. Because gone are the days where you could say, yeah, you know what, I've played 50 deliveries, 60 deliveries. I think that's good enough. Now bounty scoring with T20s, with leagues, all of these, they've really sort of taken that further up.
Striking at 80 or 85 in ODI cricket was actually considered crazy at one point. I mean, that's good. Quality player. But now, I mean, if you want to be the best or you want to win World Cups, you've got to be in the 90, close to 100 regions. And it's not scores of 30s and 40s. You've got to score big runs. And that obviously opens up another topic, isn't it? It opens up the mental capacity or mental batting fortitude of doing that. And that can happen. I mean, if we want to be really specific, we can talk about the humidity. That's going to be a massive role in this World Cup. And can you make decisions under pressure to maintain that strike rate, make runs, and win games for your country, which becomes obviously another conversation on its own.
The thing is, one thing we all tend to forget, even as fans, is how much of the sport is instinctive. There's so much quick decision making that you need to do on the go that there's not a lot of time. Like while watching it on our TV screens, we're like, oh man, you could have done this, they could have done that, and all of it. There you just have a split second, you've made the decision and you just have to live with it. That's it. So I do agree with you. It's not going to be easy, and which is why I think the competition would be a lot more competitive than people make it out to be in terms of the players, the performances, the conditions, all these external factors. It only adds to sort of what this competition is going to be. But you spoke about mental fortitude. Maizan Cup is definitely a name that always comes to my mind when you think of being tough, and of course the kind of competitor she is. Like, I don't think I've come across someone more fierce. And with her batting as well, the way she's taken it up a notch. There we go. One thing, of course, Chloe Tryon, with the way she's gone ahead, at number 7, number 8, she has the highest strike rate for any batter, minimum 500 runs in the last ODI cycle, going on to show how important she's going to be there, in that middle order, lower middle order, along with someone like a Nadine de Klerk to give those last over flourishes and everything. But then there's Maizan Cup, who's the only batter striking at over 90 and averaging over 60 balls per dismissal. Again, it's one thing to be aggressive, it's one thing to be defensive. To be able to marry both of that and sort of be in a league of your own, which is why Maizan Cup is going to be just as crucial with the bat, right, Dinesha? You spoke about how important she'll be with the ball, but how do you then compromise? Okay, you know what, we'll probably make do without her full batting potential if that means she can bowl fully. How do you do that? How do you take that call?
You can't. She's going to be needed in all facets with the bat and with the ball. I've obviously had the privilege to play alongside Marizan Cup, and she's like, everything she does she's just a routine person. She takes her practices really, really seriously, and that boils down to mental fortitude. It's not something you develop in games. It's everything you do when no one is watching, and she just has that attitude that, World Cups are won at trainings. You just pick it up at the competition. Like, that's the vibe that she gives me. And it's no surprise there. I mean, but if you're looking at, she's very close to Smriti Mandhana, Natsiva Brandt. I mean, those are the players that we speak about mental fortitude. I don't see they one of those players that say, I'll choose when to train and I'll choose not when to train, obviously body dependent. They just, that group of players, and because you brought up mental fortitude, it just looks like they They really know how they want to go about their business. And I also think they players that don't mind being challenged. I mean, I don't know Smriti and Nat Silver personally, but I mean, just from obviously interactions and what we see on social media, they look like people that's always willing to learn, but it's really hard at work when no one's watching, because all of them are so humbled when they do well. It's actually crazy, and it's that humbleness, like a lot of people don't speak about it, but that's like all the tears, the grit, everything happened before this year. This is to say you've been rewarded. So Marizan Cup plays a massive role as an all-rounder. I cannot say a batting all-rounder or bowling all-rounder. And she plays a massive, massive role alongside Laura Wolfert and the leadership team in the team to guide that team.
And also, to just get your thoughts on the players to watch out for. I know you've seen a lot of these players, right from their age group days all the way to here, the way they've just, progressed and all of that. But again, your players to watch out for South Africa this World Cup?
Players to watch out for that can make a huge impact at this World Cup. Definitely Tasman Brits. Even if you take away the Pakistan series, I would have said that. She's just like that characteristics we talk about. She embodies that. Tasman Brits definitely someone to watch out. I'm gonna have to go with Annari Dirksen. Yeah, she is a massive, massive player. I've obviously had the privilege of working with her prior to her call-ups for the national squad, and I was like, how is this girl not? But the one thing I like about her now, she's developed mature into her game, which is she can be someone really dangerous. I have to say Karabo Mesu, right? It might not be a massive knock because she's still learning into the stage. It might be a match-winning innings, so we'll do that. And her behind the stumps is something we've got to really watch out for.
Very interesting that. I mean, Karabo Miso is definitely not a name I would have thought of right fresh off the top of my head. But Tasman Bits is definitely someone, who's really blown us apart, especially in the last year or so. The way she's been smashing centuries so far, and it's been great to watch that. So hopefully she also has a great series for South Africa. But last bit, prediction time, Dinesha. 4 predictions for you. Highest run scorer, highest wicket taker from South Africa, top 4 and eventual winners.
I'm going to go with Tasman Brits. All right. I know I obviously left out Marizan captain Laura Wolfert there, but I know there's just something that's telling me Tasman Brits is going to be our highest run scorer. Highest wicket taker. I have to go Marizan Cup. I have to go. It's you see, she has to strike early, right? If she doesn't strike early in her first spell, I'm going to have to go with either Nadine de Klerk or Nkululeko Kumlaba. And then the top 4, our semi-finalists: South Africa, India, Australia, England. Heart wants South Africa to win, right? Cricketing wise, or just based on how the tournament is led up to this point, I think I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But let's just go South Africa for the win, okay?
And that's finally a wrap on what's been a marathon recording for us. It's 8 teams done and dusted. And boy, did we enjoy ourselves talking to each of them. Neha, finally, once again, I guess we are a bit more closer to the World Cup than we were, 5 days before the recording began. Once again, the excitement is palpable right now.
Yeah, Akshay, I think it's been such a marathon, set of discussions we have had. I think we've had the chance to dissect each of the teams, just understand all the major plot lines, narratives, and I'm sure the viewers are going to absolutely lap it up. They agree, disagree, it doesn't matter. But the World Cup's here, and all the teams, just look on such an equal footing, right? I mean, obviously there are some intricacies that have to be addressed, but then yeah, it's just going to be one of those World Cups that's going to be so much better than the previous editions, as the teams are going to produce a lot of quality cricket. And yeah, they can catch up on all the updates on cricket.com and on TWCP.
I completely agree with you there, and hope all of you viewers enjoyed it just as much as we did talking to each of these panelists. Do let us know in the comments who are your favorites. Who do you think would be the highest run scorer of the World Cup? Who do you think would be the highest wicket taker of the World Cup? And importantly, who do you think will be the eventual winner of the Women's World Cup 2025? Until then, it's a goodbye from both of us. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know 3.5 hours is a bit much. Do let us know in the comments what did you make of that. We did want to give this a shot and see how this pans out, because the kind of folks we got in to talk about each of the respective teams, we really felt that, we won't be doing justice to them by just releasing them as standalone videos. That's why we wanted them to be a part of our podcast. Anyways, it's a goodbye from both of us. It's a wrap for now, of course. That's only episode 36. We will be back next week talking about the first week's wrap and what all happened over there. And importantly, how did India begin versus Sri Lanka in the tournament opener. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.